Hello, 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 and welcome back to Sophisticulture. I am your host, Umnia. Today I have two articles and then a little discussion on Eurovision. The two articles are about the Met Gala and the digitine, and something about my break that I just took that I've just come back from last week. So I hope you enjoy, and I will see you on the other end after the articles for some discussion of Eurovision. The Met Gala digitine, or when fashion falls short. Preceding and then following the Met Gala this year, the justified fear of yet another glitzy, culturally iconic event being used as a cover-up for ramped-up genocidal efforts by the Israeli military soured the entire event. Protesters were successfully corralled away from the actual streets of the gala, and the entire Monday was what sparked the digitine movement, the Bloc Party 2024. And comparisons were made to The Hunger Games, a book written based on our realities, not the other way around. On the surface, it's easy to digest these events as cultural junk food, the passing white noise of the day before the next outrageous contradicting thing. However, I want to dive deep into the nuances and further outrages we can have here in a way I don't think anyone has yet. Met Gala history. If this is Fashion Super Bowl, then it contains within it all the hallmarks and nuanced critiques one can expect from American apple pie-esque institutions in the modern age. As much as some within the culture want to devalue the historically maligned artistic expression that is fashion, the Costume Institute has always done vital work preserving the designs, textiles, histories, and knowledges of the fashion industry from communities across the globe. Despite this, it holds within it as many biases as are present within their leadership, and often frequently misses the mark on showing up for true, diverse, decolonized appreciation of the art form. The gala itself suffers the same nuanced faults. I remember being a vocal but anonymous voice online against Orientalism in 2015, and even more publicly furious at the Karl Lagerfeld Gala that failed wholesale to honor and cherish the memory of the recently departed André Leontali, who made it his career's work to uphold Anna Wintour's Vogue as the premier fashion publication in the world, and has largely been unspoken about at the Met since his passing, with notable exception Coleman Domingo, who just happens to be an exception in a lot of ways. However, the gala has completely become a cultural knighting ceremony where stars are made and minted. Only recently has space been made for those stars to be of different body shapes, openly queer, or representing marginalized communities in authentic ways. This was due to cultural shifts alone. And if any woman in fashion is last to these types of parties, it's Anna Wintour, which of course often puts her ahead of many other industries, giving the illusion that she's a kingmaker and a progressive for these moves. I highly suggest you watch this video on the Met's history. So the video that I link in the article is a video by Understitch, I think, about the history of the Met Gala that came out recently. The event itself, 2024. Even the concept of the gala now has come into question, as it should. The exhibition is a ticketed event now, which means that both ticket sales to the exhibition and the gala raise funds for the Institute. And if all this money is truly needed for the archive, then this should be something subsidized by the Met itself, who surely now see the need for this Institute. The contract requiring the Institute to fundraise for itself was established at the time where the Met didn't see much value in the preservation of garments for the purposes of fashion history. This clearly must have changed, so the contract must be changed along with it. If you do not see the utility of the Institute, perhaps consider that there are garments being preserved in the archive that prove the existence of Palestine, for one. Also, please do interrogate your bias against fashion, as it is often an industry associated with women and queer people and is often maligned for its contribution. It can be easy to gloss over it as being frivolous, vapid, or unneeded, but we all wear clothes, and for those clothes to be sustainable and non-exploitative, they must be made by people and their craft and labor respected. This, in tiny part, is what the Costume Institute was built to do. Whether it does it effectively is up for debate. Furthermore, most Met Gala attendees do not pay for their own ticket. They are there as invitees for corporations. Almost all that money per ticket is coming from companies like Meta, TikTok, LVMH, and so on. Organized boycotts of these companies may end up resulting in us boycotting the Met Gala in the future, but this can only happen from a considered and focused place where the decision would apply the most pressure. fashion always fumbles the bag. I can proselytize all day about the value of fashion, the potential of fashion, but honestly, the industry has let us all down. Very few, if any, designers have made statements on Sudan, Palestine, Congo. They tend not to even make statements about exploitative practices up and down their own supply chain, including the exploitation of their assistants and interns. It took the downfall of multiple companies, Victoria's Secret included, before high-end luxury fashion en masse could even try to accept the beauty in bigger bodies, and one might argue they still haven't. Some black and brown faces have made it to high places, and some have done absolutely outstanding barrier-breaking work, the kind that pisses off a lot of entrenched people, such as Edward Enninful, but some have not. Some simply fit into the current system and do very little to change it. When I say that, I mean Edward Enninful has done that outstanding barrier-breaking work, and it's the kind of work that pisses a lot of entrenched people off. I remember there's so much outrage around Edward Enninful's tenure at British Vogue that it's comical at this point that anyone in the industry would consider the industry as a whole to be something that is always on the cusp and the vanguard. So let me continue to that point. When it comes to the big ticket gatekeepers, designers, brands, there's been very little change from the attitude of the 90s and very few up-and-coming brands from then until now seeking to break that system of thinking once and for all for fear of not being able to find funding, I can only assume. Or perhaps the average fashion customer is not the average person, so they simply keep catering to the upper echelons and therefore maintain the circular logic. What the industry seems to be able to stomach is little piecemeal changes, the kind that can be reversed if profits seem to look not so slightly as great as they thought. That's all it takes. Fashion stays ahead by considering itself forecasters of the general sentiment, but only if that sentiment is based on what came before and often is actually not representative of the general sentiment, but simply the sentiment of their inner bubble. I'm mad, I'm sad, and I know we can do better. These groups of people can no longer co-opt subversion, artistic representation, or true boundary breaking anymore if they are unable to see how they can and should be thinking differently, using the platform of high fashion for political statements, finding beauty in a much wider array of customers, and converting even those unable to buy the clothes or the perfumes into people who will conserve their clothing budget and save up for pieces that are relevant to their lives and values. As someone who considers herself a fashion customer, someone who will save up for pieces, someone who believes fewer, better clothes is the chicest course of action, and wants a thriving, beautiful fashion industry to choose from, I feel my generation are left with very few, if any, statement makers, very few innovators. Innovators, people willing to break the dress form, break the sizing chart, truly stand by the common adage that fashion is political, and actually go for it. Be political, get uninvited, be the vanguard everyone says they strive to be. If the point of this industry is to clothe people, to make clothes of quality, to democratize the form, to bring beauty to the body and to express artistic intent, this is inherently political work. And the industry may think it cannot afford to speak out, but at this rate it cannot afford to be silent. My generation will simply divest, as they are already doing, into the second-hand market and give up on the industry entirely. Anyone seeking to be disruptive, the vanguard, to do something different, cannot be so scared of the balance sheet that they simply do not use their platform or the clothes to make a statement. If we continue this way, the industry will die, and it will be the hypocrisy that killed it. Holidays are spooky when you've never known peace. So dramatic. The bulk of my upbringing was a firefight, in a team that prided ourselves on working through Christmas to get ahead, working through weekends to catch up, always behind. This week, my only free week for a while, I decided in advance, in order to mitigate catastrophe in the future, to take time off. Free time, chillin', scrolling Tumblr, watching movies, eating good food, and not feeling guilty. Well, the best laid plans, huh? There were still some remnants of work to do, which I completed with pride and a good spirit, almost relieved that I had a reason to work anyway, and the work I put off became an inexorable weight on my spirit. The good food made me feel guilty, the lie-ins meant I missed medication deadlines, and I actually became more exhausted. The discourse online, both uplifting, toxic, terrifying, irritating, and guilt-inducing. And even turning off the apps left me with my thoughts. Spooky. And I sit here on the eve of my return, wondering if this helped at all. And I know it did, because the house is clean again. I may be a mess, but the actual core tenets of my life are in order again. I've built in breaks into my regular schedule now and vowed to hold them as sacred as possible. I've decided a ton of things about what and how I contribute to online conversation so I can sustain without burning out. So yes, it worked. But a couple of core things shook out of me this week, chiefly the myth that I am overworked from the outside in. I have a hungry drive to be excellent because I feel like it'll save me, make me real, make me useful, and maybe that usefulness can be mined for a right to exist. Sick, right? But it's okay, because I found my bedrock again, and from here I shall not build hastily, I shall not move quickly. I'll make sure every brick is assessed, that I'm not just laying it because I think it might make me more appealing to an industry, to a lover, to a stranger, and I will sleep the hours I want and sack the cop in my head. As usual, Nick has come through with another amazing topic, which is the debacle that was Eurovision the past couple of weeks. My stance on Eurovision was really clear from the beginning. The call came from Palestinian organizers to boycott this ceremony, not just because a false double standard was being kept, one for Russia, one for Israel. And one might argue, people like the UK, and you can put a moral toll on who is and who isn't allowed to be involved. Azerbaijan is another one people don't talk about. I think it's Azerbaijan. Is it Azerbaijan? I'm thinking of a state beginning with A that also people wanted boycotted because of a current ongoing genocide. And there's a lot that, you're talking about Eurovision. Europe has incredibly dubious morals to begin with, and on top of that, then the people involved are always in some way or another going to be involved in terrible things. But the call came from Palestinian organizers, boycott this thing. It was very easy for me to do. I was never going to watch it anyway, but I also boycotted any semblance of reference to Eurovision that came into my life, like Eurovision watch parties, or I would downvote or not interested them. I would try to bring them down in the algorithm just generally, because I agree that it is a double standard, and I agree more importantly that regardless of whether or not you allow politics in or out of Eurovision, music is an inherently political platform, and who you allow to express themselves through this art is inherently political. And as far as I understand, there is no Palestinian contestant at Eurovision. They don't have, if you can include Israel, you can include Palestine. And if you can't include Palestine, that seems a bit odd to me. On top of that, Moroccan Oil, who are not a Moroccan company, but indeed an Israeli company, sponsored Eurovision. So watching it, even if Israel had not made it into any qualifying rounds, watching it would have been supporting Israeli businesses who are considered to be on the blocking the BDS list, the BDS boycott, divestment and sanctions list, which again comes directly from Palestinian activists and organizers. So that was very clear cut to me. Everybody's fiff-faffing and dilly-dallying around it. Ollie Alexander is on my shit list now forever, because the way he handled this was just awful. Actually, I don't know if they go by they-them pronouns, so maybe it's they. I will just use they as a neutral term. Their reaction to this call-out that we had for them was absolutely bonkers, nuts, insane, and I did not like it. And it means that they are now on my shit list forever. Because the way... And it was a lot of different artists that said, no, it's fine. Music brings us all together. Yeah, how? And who is it bringing together? Because Palestinians are not allowed to be represented or have their opinions heard, neither in the audience nor as a statement by the artists. I don't know why you thought this was going to work, especially because, and this is what upset me this entire couple of weeks, people who are not Palestinian, speaking over Palestinians, doing the activism as if they are the leader of that movement, as if Palestinians cannot be trusted to know what the most effective course of action is for their own liberation. And that's, I think, where I've been getting messed up the past couple of weeks, is that there are a lot of people taking the lead on quote-unquote activist action for Palestine that have not consulted with activists that activate for Palestine. And I've got a couple of videos where I've said this on TikTok that have gone insanely viral, that have brought a whole bunch of very negative and also incredibly positive conversation to my platform, where I basically said, the reason that suddenly, randomly, in the last couple of weeks and months and years, people within the movement have been catching strays, and people who are actively against liberation seem to manage to continue to have careers, is because some people feel they know better. Some people feel they know what the most effective course of action is over the communities they are attempting to speak for. So instead of deferring, which was my main tactic after October 7th, I was like, the point here is not to decide what needs to be done. I need to go to the voices that have the information, that have the history, that have the knowledge, that have the education, and I need to use my platform to boost them. And I shouldn't speak unless I have something to say that those people are not saying, that has to do directly with the liberation of me, because I can speak for me, and directly have are messages that can be amplified, that other Palestinians or other people of color, other Congolese, other Sudanese people, other Haitian people, other people from Tigray, across the world. If it's a message that I know is not being heard from that community, maybe I will put those words into my mouth to try and amplify them, to try and say them in a different turn of phrase, to try and say them with a different analysis, to try and get more people to hear that message and to be educated. But most, if not all of the time, I am reposting, I am sometimes stitching or duetting, but most of the time I defer to those that know better, even when it comes to the liberation of a group of people that technically I should be able to speak for. And again, I don't like talking about where I'm from, but when it comes to discussions around Sudan, most of the time I will defer to other Sudanese people who have boots on the ground, because I know what my limit is in regards to my community. I know how attached and how not attached I am for my own personal familial reasons, the likes of which I do not have to divulge in order to be the perfect ally, the perfect activist to my community. Sometimes all I have to do is amplify what they're doing, and that allows the best and most effective communication, the most effective education to get to people. That's all it takes. And I think a lot of people online understand this, and then there is a certain few that really just are either grifting or they want to be the head of a movement. So that's why Ollie Alexander's reaction, and a lot of the reaction of the artists that ended up competing in Eurovision, very much angered me, because it's not a test you can, it's not an essay. This is not an essay question. This is a multiple choice. Are you going to follow the advice of Palestinian activists, or are you not? Therefore, if you are saying you're not an ally then. What you are is someone who feels that their personal opinion on the matter can override the opinions of those that are actually activists for that movement, right? So there's that aspect of it, and then there's I don't ever, when something is associated with art or queer people or women or things that are usually devalued, as we just talked about with the Met Gala, I don't like to be saying that something is frivolous or unnecessary. I've just never understood Eurovision. And that's crazy for me to say, because Eurovision should work for me. I am a musician. I am a musician that loves pop music. I'm a musician that loves ABBA. I'm a musician that loves Europe. I'm a musician that loves Europeans. I love people from all of the countries that are involved in Eurovision, except Israel. Actually, I think I even have friends of the family that have family in Israel. So I've been known to have relations that are very close relations with people from all parts of the countries that are included in Eurovision. What I have an issue with is that by very definition, it is an exclusionary competition that has to do with national identity. And this is bound to now come up every year forever. And it has been the case for forever. And part of the reason I think my family never really got into Eurovision is because Israel has been included. And as a broadcasting area, it makes sense that they're included because it's based on the European broadcasting something, whatever it is, that includes that included back in the day the colony, the colony of Palestine. Palestine had been colonized by the British. It had been occupied by the British. And so Palestine was included in that drafting area. It was included in that zone. And now that it has been settled by Israelis, it is now Israel that gets to participate. And so already we're talking about politics, and that's just that little part of the world. Think about all the other countries that are involved in all of their histories and who does and doesn't get to speak. I think a lot about the fact that there are a lot of European countries that are involved that have weird commonwealthy still ties to their old colonies that are majority black. I think of the fact that the woman that is going to sing, I think, the national anthem at the Olympics in Paris has gotten such hate from the French population because she's black. And from potentially, I can't remember where exactly she's from, but she's from one of these countries that used to be colonized by the French. And now these are the same people that have been allowed to return or live or emigrate, call it emigration. It's not immigration. It's not migration. It's emigration because, you colonize their country. They are merely expats from wherever they have come from. And they got mad that she's going to be representing France. And so much of this is why I find it hard to be like, oh, well, it's just Eurovision. Because I think fundamentally what we allow art to be and what we allow art to speak for crafts our world. And in ways I believe are more powerful than a political stump speech, in ways I believe are more powerful than a news broadcast. Art can change minds. My mum always brings up this anecdote of how she doesn't believe Barack Obama would have got elected if there hadn't been a black president, I think, on the West Wing. Was it the West Wing there was a black president? I can't remember. There was a TV show where they had a black president. And she was like, well, that was how people were able to fathom the idea, to visualize the idea of what a black man in the White House would look like, because there was an example that made sense. And I feel that art, honestly, has so much more potential to do that. And I feel that every sector of the art world right now, highbrow and lowbrow, is failing at this under the most simple and easy purview possible. There are so many ways to be I don't want people to be like this. I want people to be fully for the decolonization of Palestine. But there are so many different stances you can take that aren't. You can be pro-Palestinian in a lot of ways that are tertiary, really, that are kind of surface level, that aren't really calling for the dissolution of Israel as a state into a one-state solution with Palestinians having voting rights. You don't have to call for that, to call for the end. So many people that signed the ceasefire, Artists for Ceasefire, or just generally asking for a ceasefire, have not under any circumstances come out with any more serious language than that. That's all it takes. And there are still some artists that are refusing to say even that. And I find that baffling, fucking baffling. The entire art world is unable to even go there. Even if, some of them can't even call for even a temporary ceasefire, which is exactly not what we want. But at the very least, you'd think, it drives me up the wall. So that's really what I'm just going to check that I've covered everything in Nick's question, because I'm really worried that I've forgotten something. But that's really where I stood in terms of all of that. I felt very, very, very disappointed, but I felt disappointed in the way I have felt disappointed in every entertainment and artistic sector in the past 7 months, because the simplest course of action, which is not even what I want people to do, they can't even do. They can't even do the simple stuff. And Ollie Alexander can't even just make a statement and go, I'm not turning up. There's nothing. There's just nothing from people. Absolutely nothing. And I don't believe that is, they're worried for their careers. There comes a point where you can just pretend, right? You don't even if and so that's where I'm confused, is it's not even the bare minimum. It's not even the bare minimum. but they can't even do not the bare minimum. I'm finding it very, 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 very difficult to reconcile. Now, this ties in with kind of what I've been discussing about kind of the I've just checked the message, the question. I have covered everything. This ties in with the videos I've been making recently about the block list and how that devolved into people managing to be able to say that we should be blocking Bella Hadid, which is insane to say. And it kind of devolved that way because I think a lot of the discussion around it was based, there were two things conflated: divesting from celebrity culture and divesting from people who have not spoken up for Palestine. I'm in one singular mind about what I believe is the best course of action in terms of pressuring people so that they do speak up, and when they do speak up, saying thank you and appreciating that effort. I'm very much that person. However, deep down, I can say this on the podcast, deep down at the base of my spirit, I'm very, very, I feel so betrayed by the current silence and the level to which people cannot even rise to. Like there's just a it feels like since October 7th, I've been setting the bar lower and lower and lower. And normal, regular, everyday artists that I know on my level around me are able to exceed that bar by 10 or 20 times. People with barely any money, we are all of us scrounging together our connections, our network, our careers from scratch. And we are able to say 10, 20, 30 times more than my bare minimum. And there are people who I adore, who raised me, whose art is deeply important to me, who I cannot divest from spiritually because they are part of the reason I want to keep on living, who are refusing to do even the tiniest thing that exists a good 20 leagues below the bar I've set, right? Not even 20 leagues below the bar I have set. It's painful to me that I cannot now listen to a Beyonce record. Beyonce, who is my lifeline. She is an artist that I consider my lifeline. When I am unable to get out of bed, Beyonce gets me out of bed, and I still listen to this album every day. I've been listening to Cowboy Carter. I do not suggest anybody listens to it. I'm not endorsing listening to it. This is just something that I need for my spirit because it is an album. She is an artist that means a lot to me. But my God, I get out of bed and I'm listening to this thing and it gets me out of bed and I still in my head I'm thinking, Beyonce, not even a word. You know what one word would mean. And for you, it would not ruin your whole life. It wouldn't. And you could say something 20 leagues below my bar, below the lowest rung of the bar I have set. You could say something 20 leagues below that, and it would make such a huge bloody difference. It would mean so much to so many people, not just Palestinians, but the fact that you would even speak up would mean so much for people that love you, that feel that you are starting to, as an artist, feel as if you don't live the values you speak of. And the thing is that she could have been donating this entire time. But that doesn't change what I believed. It's Schrodinger's Beyonce. It's Schrodinger's Beyonce. Until I can open that box and see that that's what she's doing, I know that's not the point of donations, but doing it silently is no comfort to those that need to know that she's doing something, right? Me especially, and it's not like, oh, she says the bare minimum and then I'm okay, I'm fine, I'm listening to the album, it's chill, it's cool, and I'm absolved of feeling bad about it. But it's just nothing. It's absolutely fucking nothing. It's absolute radio silence. And that's the bit I can't do. If I were listening to Cowboy Carter and I had, this is with Zendaya. Zendaya is the perfect example. I'm like, girl, wow, I could have expected just a little bit more from you, or maybe you'll do it. But then I have that one post that she did in October. So I know at the very least, maybe she's donating behind the scenes. Maybe she has been talking to people, having conversations, facilitating conversations. I don't know Zendaya's life, and I'm not about to sit and police another black woman when I already know where she stands in terms of what's humane, right? Or in terms of what's humane. She may have not reached my lower rung bar of what I would have expected someone with a platform like that to do, but at the very least, I know she knows what's humane. There are certain people I support where at the very least I know they know what's humane, right? What's humane and what humanity they believe is should be maintained and should be protected for the Palestinians. That is way below where I would want people to be, but at least it's something. Beyonce has given me nothing, and there are so many other people. So many other creatives at very, 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 very high levels where it is just radio silence, and it breaks my heart, and it makes it completely it makes their artistic contribution to my life start to rot inside my heart. I can't explain it enough. I just can't. I can't explain it in stronger terms. That's how I feel. It's like their artistic contribution that under a lot of circumstances has saved my life is starting to rot in my spirit and will no longer be able to do so. And then in its place come so many other artists who have so much more at stake. So much more at stake than Beyonce for saying 20 leagues below what my bottom rung bar is for this conversation, who are saying 10 or 20 or 30 times more than I would than the bare minimum. Putting their livelihoods and their lives at danger, inconveniencing themselves and their events and their venues, changing venues when they feel they need to boycott because there is a certain venue that has done this or the other. I saw a show that was cancelled in London, a queer show, cancelled and moved to a different venue because the current venue was going to have a Eurovision viewing party. Do you know the costs involved and the trust broken among collaborators that risk a lot of time and money being in collaboration with one another in central London, and they still did it because it was standing on fucking business. I hope that's enough discussion about what I feel happened with Eurovision and what's going on with artists at large. Because I don't think this is just a celebrity influencer thing. Even Kim Kardashian, I believe Kim Kardashian makes art. She does art. It may not be art you like. You may feel it's too derivative. You may feel it's too mainstream. But she is, at the end of the day, a reality artist. What she does is create storylines. What she does is create celebrity culture. Celebrity culture is not frivolous. It is part of our conversations. It's part of gossip. It's part of how we maintain society. For good or for bad, it is not frivolous. It's very serious. It's very serious. And when people spend their time and their energy on it, it's very serious. So when someone comes out in active support of something that is against the values of me or my community, it's important that you divest from people like that. And it's also important that if those artists do not believe those things that are antithetical to the values of their audience, that they say something, one tiny thing, just one little tiny crumb, just something, even because that's the difference. The difference is then, at the very least, I know where your heart is. It's with the humanity. It's with what's humane and what's fair and what is unjust and what is what's the word that everyone's been using on the bloody news? Proportional. That it's improportional. It's unproportional, the violence that is being waged in Gaza. At the very least, you know that, right? Anyway. And then I can start to go, well, let me focus on the people who really have said nothing and who have done nothing. And let me heavily focus on the people who have said something and it's the most awful, vile response to, and the most inhumane response, That's it for this week. Send me all the topics you would like me to cover next week as soon as you possibly can, because I'm going to be queuing up about 2 weeks worth of stuff. And I need that in advance because I've got 2 different projects I'm wrapping on in the next 2 weeks. And so I'm going to need to put all of that stuff up in advance. So give me your topics as soon as possible. Love you very much. Have a great week. Free Palestine, free Sudan, free Congo, free Tigray, free Haiti, free South America, free the world. Amen.
Hello, hello, hello. I'm back from the dead. And we are going to start today's episode by reading an article I released on the 23rd of May called What Dopamine Means to Me. And then we will talk from there. The song. Dopamine was conceived the summer of 2022 in response to a short film I made for Agbo's No Sleep Till Film Fest. Isolated from a filmmaking community due to retaining COVID precautions, and without a support network of COVID-conscious creatives, which I now have, I made a film solo called Normal, which catalogued how I was coping with this altered state of being that was thrust upon us by society. The film didn't place, and furthermore the film hadn't got the feeling out of my system. I watched people I respected and admired ignore COVID precautions and then go on to cancel tours. I saw friends of friends go on extravagant holidays and then fall off the map for weeks. One of these people now masks full-time and has long COVID. Grief filled my heart, and also confusion, repression, and a feeling of intense loneliness. I still had a song on my spirit, chronically online glass half full type girl that I am in all that chaos. The song is meant to evoke a watercolor wash of all of this. The FOMO, the survival through apocalypse, the feeling behind, the wanting to escape and dance or dream or read or fantasize through it. Lyrically, of course, but also through the production. I wanted the music to feel ironic and angry, but also wistful and sad, which is how I felt and how I still feel. A mix of countercultural now and nostalgia fuel. I wanted the song to feel fun and exciting and raw, but also somehow isolated in its own world and locked down. The ending of the song is meant to evoke internet overload and overwhelm, and that singular feeling of having too many conflicting thoughts and nowhere to discharge them. As a result, it became a song that feels very, very time-locked and somehow still seems to be relevant to me 2 years on, and likely will continue to be for years to come. The video. Kevin Smith movies got me through the bulk of 2020 to 2022, especially the concept of Clerks, a film made on a credit card debt and a dream by a first-time filmmaker that won the Golden Lion at Cannes. What a dream. I knew my original idea was going to be hard to pull off, an homage to Clerks, Dogma, and Chasing Amy, set in a comic book shop, with interstitials from two comic book characters inside the protagonist's fantasy, so eventually we had to compromise and make it a bedroom. Bringing in the elements of COVID lockdown were a no-brainer, but they evolved during production from a clerk who was masking to a locked-down clerk storing inventory for the shop in her apartment. The themes of procrastination and distraction pervaded every draft, and it was about bringing the emotional storytelling elements of the song into practical storytelling beats. The shoot was hectic but fun, and I couldn't have been blessed with a more enthusiastic team to bring the video to life. I've given Dopamine so much love and affection, almost as if she's my shield. The song, I feel, captures so much of how I feel and how I navigate in this post-COVID apocalypse. If there's anything you need to know about me, you will find it in that song and video, sure as breathing. Dopamine means communication and understanding, and if you understand the song, you understand me too, and I understand you. Thank you for loving this song as much as I do, and thank you for absolutely every single one of you for supporting my music. It means the world. Okay, so that's the article. I'm now going to kind of go through it. On top of that, I posted the original script to Dopamine as a Patreon exclusive, so that you can understand a little bit more of what the original vision was and how we ended up getting to the final video. On top of that, there are mood boards, the original pitch deck for it, and also the script, the very, very rough draft script of The Year from the Devil himself, which are all up for you to enjoy. If you are a Patreon subscriber, not free but paid tier, so Spectrum tier will be able to access all of that. But yeah, let me just run you through kind of what the process was. So I met Anna, who is the co-director of Dopamine. We were out on a field in Milton Keynes. I was a day player in a short film, and she was a script supervisor. And we just really hit it off. She was an incredibly passionate, really on it, kind of creative. And I just felt like I was working with someone that was really like organized and had their shit together, and she was running that ship. And so we stayed connected on Instagram after the shoot, and then, you know, I was promoting Diary of a Fangirl, and eventually it just occurred to me that I wanted to make videos, and I already knew someone that wanted to direct, right? And so I just asked her, I was like, hey, I want to make this visual album. Do you want to be involved? And she jumped on it. And so we started working on this album in like a really profound way. And then it was just about kind of getting the crew together and making the crew part of it work, which took a lot longer than we thought. We thought we were going to end up filming in like summer, but we ended up filming at the beginning of this year. So it was fantastic working with her, and she brought on a really amazing team. And though a lot of the elements were kind of quite hectic to bring together in the final iteration, I do feel what we ended up with was a really, really brilliant final product. It's very different from the original script. The original script was, like I said, based in a comic book store. It was meant to reference Clerks a lot more strongly. It was meant to kind of really evoke a lot of the scenes from Clerks as well, because that's a film. I draw the parallel of the feeling I had with Dopamine. I draw it with a lot of Gen X 90s nostalgia. Like Violet was meant to feel a lot more like Kurt Cobain. And we ended up moving towards the more witchy elements of Violet, the more kind of punky, feminine, witchy versions of Violet to coincide with what her character is within the full story of the visual album, which is maybe I might write as a novel or a short story one day, but there is a story there that we don't quite get to explore. And because we've decided not to move forward with the visual album now, we won't be exploring it necessarily as originally intended. I may end up writing it up or something just into kind of like a screenplay so that it's like something that exists out there. But ultimately, the original idea was that this Violet character is symbolic for, and you can see in the music video, is symbolic for a lot of insecurities, a lot of self-effacement, the feeling of monstrosity and loneliness, the feeling of hunger in loneliness, the feeling of feeling like a bit of an outcast and a freak, and repressing that side of how you feel, how you look, how you act, in pursuit of Jamie, which is perfection, which is a kind of altogether-ness, which is a beautiness, which is a polished sense of things. And those two juxtaposed felt like the two characters on my left and right shoulder during the pandemic. This idea of, well, now's the perfect time, clean girl aesthetic, get your shit together, you can be what you really, really, really want to be. And my kind of ambition going into overdrive, trying to create a new version of myself that was beautified and perfect and polished. Now that I felt that the clock had stopped on the world and I could maybe get a jump on the next phase of my life because everything had stopped. What I never seem to take into account is the stress of any, for instance, every opportunity of a rest is a chance for me to get a jump on the competition, is my chance to get ahead, is my chance to, not at the cost of anybody, but like my idea of kind of using an opportunity to get kind of ahead a little bit so that I don't feel that I fall behind in the future. But it means that every rest is a chance to work, and every work time is work time. And so I'm running myself to the absolute limit constantly. And again, if I could sit here and say, and the solution has been found, if I could sit here and say that the answer I've reached nirvana and I'm not this person anymore, I don't think I'd have the drive to make art anymore. I think this is fundamental to who I am as a person, that this is something that I do and that I have an urge to do in most situations. So it's kind of, I don't know what to. I don't know how to explain it. Anyway, it's not going away. It's a part of me that I can't get rid of. This idea of shooting for what Jamie is. But just as much as that is true, I also can't get rid of Violet, in a sense, because Violet is the absolute extreme example in my head, and maybe not even the most extreme, but the most extreme I could put on video, version in my head of who I feel I am at the core, which, you're going, oh, that's so dramatic. You can't possibly see yourself that way, or you can't possibly, believe that at your core, you're just kind of chaotic and insane. But I have had that feeling, my entire life, that I'm kind of, okay, so this is not going to turn into a therapy session, but I have had this feeling my entire life that there is no amount of quiet I can be that satisfies people, and that my base existence, the way I exist at my core, is too loud, too much, chaotic, messy, just all of the things that are considered to be unladylike, uncouth, untamed. And, I think it's interesting, a lot of conversations are had around like women feeling that they're not pretty enough, or women feeling that they're not tame enough, or any of the things that society wants them to be. And that's certainly one component of the pressure I'm referring to. And again, not to kind of get too political, but there is another component to this that has to do with how I've been perceived within white spaces from a very, very, very young age. And the assumption that I am going to grow into someone that is too loud, too self-important, too arrogant, too confrontational. And so there is this kind of deeply ingrained sense that my base instinct, the person I am at my core, is cringe and loud and crass and too much and messy and chaotic. And it's hard to beat those allegations in a world that what I'll say is this: there is a reason Jamie has wavy blonde hair and Violet has my hair, right? And there's politics in that. There is symbolism in that. And it's there for a reason. It's done on purpose. And it's not necessarily about wanting to be a white girl, ever. It is more about wanting to tame what you believe the world thinks is unruly about you, but ultimately thinking and believing that the thing the world thinks is unruly really isn't something you can change. It's simply who you were born as, who you are, what you look like. You could be the most quiet, timid version of yourself, and there would still be this base assumption that one day there's going to be this bursting out of someone that people find untamable or monstrous, right? Violet is that. And Violet also stands in for deep self-loathing and also self-repression, because ultimately the way it's meant to feel in the video is that Nina, the main character, does not want to acknowledge the fact that though she has Violet up on the wall, she doesn't like her. Like, she doesn't want to acknowledge that she has a connection and affinity to that character that is unruly and chaotic, because it would imply a sense of feeling seen or identifying with it. But then she is up on the wall, and when she feels at her worst, Nina sees Violet in the mirror, right? But Jamie never makes an appearance on the wall. Jamie is not in the mirror. Jamie is just on the TV. And that's what ties into like the concept of dopamine, which is that it is very much a song about looking outward into media that is piped into the home, not media that is, something you go out and pursue. It is media that is in your house, that comes to your phone, that comes to your TV, that gives you the ideal image, but it is not tangible within your reality. It's not tangible within your room. It's not anything you can find in her reality, in the main character Nina's reality. All you have for Jamie is what she is on TV. Now, I added an extra layer to Jamie, which is that Jamie's not happy. Jamie may be what Violet reviles and what Nina really wants to be. But at the end of the day, Jamie is uncomfortable. She's trying to, the reason I gave the bridge to Jamie is because Jamie's trying to say that, grass is greener when you pin it. Grass is you're going to look at the other side of the world and think it's better here because all you're getting are the curated Pinterest aesthetic freaking things that are handed to you as being like the iconic way of being. Sorry, I had to throw my phone away because it was vibrating on my vibrating on my desk. You may think there is a way of being that is perfect, but the people living that reality don't think it's perfect and may actively be uncomfortable, cold, alone, themselves isolated. And so Jamie, though Nina's looking to Jamie as if she's perfect, and Violet is such an opposite and such a unwanted force in the story, Jamie is also not happy. And it's clear from a lot of different cues you get that Jamie is like completely shut down. And at the beginning, you're kind of meant to feel like Jamie doesn't have a personality, or that Jamie does not herself have anything particularly unique about her or interesting about her. But I hope that as you hit that bridge, you start to realize what is occurring with Jamie, which is that she's considered this ideal and she's not happy. And that was something I came to a realization with on a lot of different axes during the pandemic, which is that there is a set of ideals that everybody is aspiring to. And those that have all of it, and even those that only have some of it, are never really happy or comfortable. And there's so much deconstructing of what we consider to be the right way of doing things, or the clean way, or the ideal way of being, like the clean girl aesthetic kind of thing is what I was trying to say. That when you ask those girls what it takes to do that, they go, "Oh, it's just for TikTok. It's just videos. That's not what my house actually looks like. That's not how my day actually goes. This is content. I'm making content." And of course, we all receive it as being real, as being something that can be the way your life looks. And there are elements of it that you can incorporate into your life. But your life, A, can't be that all the time, and B, rarely is that. And, consistently. And, so many different things I've watched and read of people talking about taking the bus to industry events. And, I used to, in 2022-ish, I was looking at a lot of kind of red carpet stuff. And my first instinct during the pandemic, 2020 to 2022, when I would look at like red carpets and events and stuff, that was my first real moment where I was thinking, oh, I don't think these people have a choice on whether or not they get to be there, because I wouldn't make the choice to be there during an active pandemic. So we have been sold this idea that like actually you want to be at all these glamorous parties with these glamorous people doing glamorous things. But whenever anyone says it's a job, we don't really believe them, because it's like, oh, what a great job. But actually, it is a job because it's mandatory. There are a lot of these things that we look up to as being like these amazing events that we'd all want to go to, that are actually a heart sink for a lot of the people that go. I remember feeling the first time I felt this was, ironically, we've been talking about the Met Gala a couple of weeks ago, watching the Met Gala documentary first Monday in May, and also there was a clip of the Kardashians getting ready for the Met Gala, and you realize 90% of getting ready for these events is some of the most uncomfortable things you can imagine to do with presenting your appearance. You then wait for an inordinate amount of time to get into the event. You're photographed. Your photographs are picked apart by the public. You get in, you maybe undo your shoes, you maybe undo your dress a little bit to try and have some room to breathe. You're essentially an ornament that has been paraded around for the past 7 to 8 hours. You're expected to be cordial, you're expected to be kind, you're expected to be social. But at the end of the day, you're there to fundraise for a institution that you're not even really a part of. There to wear clothes of designers on which you barely get any input. If you do, it's quite a rare occurrence. Helping the fashion industry do something. It's a job. The Met Gala is not some amazing blessing someone gets given. It's a great thing for your career in terms of public acknowledgement. But at the end of the day, it is a job where you're quite literally just there to take your name and your body and become a mannequin for a fashion designer, which me, as someone who enjoys art, I would have genuinely zero problem with that. But that's the framing that needs to occur, not the framing of all these rich, wealthy, elite, gorgeous people get to go to this rich, wealthy, elite, gorgeous event. Like, capitalism doesn't actually allow for that. Late stage capitalism especially does not actually allow for parties and joy for the sake of parties and joy and exclusivity. It doesn't really exist anymore. Everything's a job. Everything has sponsors. Everything has obligations. Everything has a PR event strategist who's telling people where to stand on the step and repeat and what clothes they need to wear and whether or not they've got their picture taken and whether or not they've got their picture taken with this thing or with that thing. Everything's an advertisement. Everything's a sponsorship. There is no fun anymore, and the fun is not really being broadcast anymore because it's not lucrative to post about your fun if it's not also toward a capitalistic goal. And as that occurred to me during the pandemic, Jamie became a character in stark relief because Jamie exemplifies what I wanted to be, the illusions I had about who I wanted to be and what things I wanted to accomplish, both in my life and in my appearance, only really to come up with the reality that the people who I believed to be living that life were not, and of the few of them that were living something close to that life, it was a full-time job to do so. And so I wanted Jamie in there, especially because the long story of Jamie within the comic book that is the rest of the visual album, the longer story of Jamie is very much that. And Jamie exists as a figment of Violet's imagination, insofar as Violet creates Jamie. And Jamie is new to the world in that sense, learns all of this, manages to fall in and out of the good and the bad of what it means to be considered like the most perfect version of a person. And eventually Jamie basically ends up in a place where she kind of just wants to be Violet to escape it because it becomes too much of a pressure to maintain everybody else's expectations of good, even if it's natural to her, because it also leaves her completely straitjacketed. And that's not just something I've observed in other people. That is something I have found in multiple different areas of my life, where I have found myself doing well, and I realize I am stymied and I'm trapped by the expectations of the people who needed me to do well for their system to continue. And that was all through my childhood, and that is now in my grown adulthood. And it's the push and pull between Jamie and Violet is completely endemic to my psyche. It's exactly how I think. And you know, it's not about abolishing the blonde, straight-haired girl in my head. It's about how do I integrate. And this is what the journey of the visual album, and more importantly, it's the visual album is merely a visual representation of what happens in the album. The album is my integration of Jamie and Violet. Once you get to I Don't Really Think I'm Going Out Tonight, that is a party song, you know, about not leaving the house. And that to me is integration of Jamie, who is the girl that's meant to be like vivacious and fun, and she's got to parties and she's so pretty and she's so great and everybody loves her. And Violet, who is something I believe to be my core base level person, which is I don't want to leave the house. I'm exhausted, I'm tired, I'm overwhelmed, I'm burnt out, I'm overstimulated. I'm not leaving the house. And when you integrate those two people, what you get is a dance party track about staying at home. Right? So by I Don't Really Think I'm Going Out Tonight, I've integrated Jamie and Violet. And I'm not going to say that it's a done deal. Like, I still have to remember to integrate Jamie and Violet. But after I released Diary of a Fangirl, that was a marker in me of managing to maintain the fact that I don't stop being Jamie just because I feel I am Violet at any given time. If I feel messy, if I feel unruly, if I feel reclusive, if I feel monstrous, if I feel lonely, that doesn't stop me from also being the best version of myself, the most put together version of myself, the most eloquent version of myself. And you can see it even in the fact that sometimes I will do TikToks looking terrible. Like, in my estimation, it's like, I could have done my hair. I could have put on some lip balm. I could have put on a smoothing filter. I could have put on any filter. I could have lit this better. but I need to say something to the world, and I don't know if I'm going to say it any better than this, and I know I don't look great, but I need to send it now. And you go, well, Umnia, you're a public figure to some extent, which crazy, right? You're a public figure to some extent. Why wouldn't you take a little bit more care in your appearance every time you post? And it's like, because actually the point of posting to me on any given day, on TikTok or anywhere, is not actually about how hot I am. It's about the things I have to say. And if I can really get to that point in my head, then Jamie and Violet are integrated, because there is no reason I cannot be taken seriously looking a little bit less than perfect on any given day. I'm still hot. I'm just also in a bonnet, you know? It's, in a hoodie. It's not, none of these preclude how good my words are, and none of them make me monstrous, but I know that I don't look perfect. And so it's the integration, it's the middle, it's knowing that I can be both. And I really integrated that with Diary of a Fangirl. And I hope you feel that by the end of the video, there is this sense of a hint of that integration, because the devil then calls at the end. Now, the devil is meant to be a representation of a character that's literally in the visual album that is also the comic book, which is also kind of referred to is referred to in the very next track on the album, which is The Year from the Devil himself. And the devil as a character within this story has to do a lot with sorry, my computer blipped for a second. The character in the story of the devil has to do with that temptation to the outdoors, to outside, to being the version of Jamie that I feel is like the ultimate. And the reason I say the temptation to outside as opposed to going outside is that it's not an outside that is beneficial to me. It's not an outside, it's not a going, it's not a party, it's not a rendezvous, it's not a anything. It's not it's not an external thing that is beneficial to me. Otherwise, it would just be about being outside. Like, I can be outside, I enjoy outside, I go outside a lot, I love outside. Grass is actually one of my favorite things. And it is not, it's greener when you pin it, but it's grounding when you touch it, period. But the devil has to do with the kinds of engagements that that I can be convinced to go to, or that I could have been in the past convinced to go to, that end up fucking with my mental health. And the devil as a character is meant to represent that. The devil within the album has to do more with this temptation, this sense of a temptation to someone, a temptation to thought patterns. The devil in tarot has to do specifically with vices. And Diary of a Fangirl has to do with the concept of fandom as a vice, right? Fandom and idealism and escapism as a vice. So the devil within the album is the vice of escapism, and the devil within the visual album, within the comic book story, is essentially the same thing, but grounded in this idea of the devil is trying to take Jamie out to dance. The devil is trying to get Nina out of the house, right? To a party. Like and it's, I have nothing against parties. Let me just say that now. I love a good party. But number one, during a pandemic, no go. But also, it's not a party that I want to be at. It's simply a party I feel FOMO for not being at, and that if I were at it, it would cause me all sorts of problems mentally, spiritually, emotionally. So it's not there's a difference between a good, fun party of people who are nice and kind, people who are considerate, people who respect boundaries, hanging out with friends, going out to the park, going out for drinks, those kinds of out, not being referred to here. The devil is specifically about out that is detrimental, out that is a temptation and a vice, a FOMO-based decision, a fear of missing out on something, knowing that actually, even if you're there is no sense of euphoria of having got there. It is just a bad thing for your mental health. And I can find myself that, following that temptation a lot. And so between that out being the grounding basis for the story and the concept of the devil within the album being about vices, right? And an addiction to escapism, an addiction to external means of regulating your emotions. The final scene of Dopamine is kind of an amalgamation. It's kind of a microcosm of what that ends up being, what message that ends up having in the full album. Because essentially what happens there is, after all of this growth, after all of this putting down the phone, finally picking up the comic book, no more procrastination, no more sense of like quick hits of dopamine, no more sense of doing the thing that's detrimental instead of doing the thing that's holistic. So the comic book, reading the comic book, even if you consider it escapism, it's healthy escapism. It's something that's not going to be detrimental to Nina's mental health. But she keeps ignoring the comic book in favor of a whole bunch of other vices that are not good for her mental health, that keep causing her harm, that keep causing her pain. And it's that juxtaposition that we explore when we talk about escapism within Diary of a Fangirl and within Dopamine as a Video specifically. So at that final moment where she has learned her lesson, she's put down the phone and she's reading the thing, the devil has to call 3 times. And on that 3rd time, she does rebound a little bit and go back. She does go, oh my God, the devil's calling. Oh my God, and checking her hair, even though she's not going to be on a video call. And she has to, within that moment, we have to show that she's learnt her lesson. And so she's almost out the door. She's almost accepting the invitation to FOMO, to go and find out what she's missing out on. It sounds like a fun party. It's actually literally referencing a scene that would have been in the next video, that is the devil in their abode, throwing a beautiful, gorgeous, amazing party. She looks at the mask. She's reminded that this is a party that really shouldn't be happening. And it's using COVID as a way of explaining the difference between a wholesome party and a party that is being done for all the wrong reasons. A party that is a bad escapism versus a party that is a good escapism. Because a good escapism is a holistic escapism that is accessible, that is not causing people harm or danger. So a bad escapism would be a party in the middle of a pandemic, when people should be masking and staying at home and protecting one another. Instead, it's like the underground parties that happened during COVID. It's like a complete lack and a disregard for people's health and safety. That's a bad escapism, and it's emblematic of every single kind of excursion that does that to people. It's not just because it's not accessible to people because you could catch COVID because no one's masking, because no one's looking after each other. It could also be people ignoring people's boundaries sexually, ignoring people's boundaries in terms of substances and drugs. And a big one for me, ignoring people's boundaries in terms of alcohol. I don't drink. And so sometimes I will find myself in situations where the whole conversation for hours is trying to get me to drink, trying to work out what drink is going to work, trying to buy me drinks. Those are bad excursions. Those are bad forms of escapism. Not just that the substances people are using or the behaviors people are using are bad forms of escapism, but that they are bad to the people involved. They're bad to anybody that turns up. Like, the pressures involved are not good pressures. They're not fun pressures. They're not, pushing you to be the best person you can be pressures. They're not looking after each other pressures. They are just simply boundary pushing pressures. So I wanted to make that final scene. If we never did the rest of the visual album, I wanted there to be the final kernel of the lesson of the whole story in that final bit, because this video was a microcosm for what we do with the album, with the full feature. And really, at the end of the day, I don't really think I'm going out tonight is literally name dropped in that final line, because part of that song has to do with ignoring the social pressure around needing to do or be a certain person for people to think that you're doing life right. And it's interesting because I'm explaining all of this on this podcast, and hopefully people understand what I'm saying. But I can explain this to people over and over, and they say they understand it. They say they understand the concept of social pressure being something that can be actively harmful when you ignore people's boundaries. But then you watch people's behavior, because they are so acclimated and so used to breaking through people's boundaries because it's socially sanctioned to do so. You're allowed to talk about, oh my gosh, you don't drink? Is it because you're an alcoholic? Oh, is it because you're religious? Oh, you just don't like the taste of alcohol? Well, you haven't tried ginger ale. Well, you haven't tried spirit. Well, did you try vodka? Have you tried tequila? Well, have you tried a sangria? Well, have you tried a cosmopolitan? Like, just not respecting or listening to people because socially you're allowed not to. Right? And it's okay when we talk about like potentially substances, like, oh, people shouldn't force you to do drugs, or, oh, people shouldn't force you to accept sexual advances. But there are degrees to which people do allow that. There's a lot of degrees to which people do allow a lot of that behavior. But because people are considered to be too sensitive when they mention things like that, it goes unnoticed. And then people like me fall out of the social melee because those pressures are dangerous, they are unfair, and they're not being checked. And then in comes the discussions that I talk about in I Don't Really Think I'm Going Out Tonight. People don't think I'm where I'm supposed to be. And people want me to go out, but I'm saying no. And they're now confused and they call me socially inept or socially incompatible. But what it is an opting out of a behavior that is just simply, to me, and this is no disrespect to people, it's a form of being willfully ignorant or just straight up like brain dead, because it's this idea that you're not functionally analyzing how you are socializing with people and how your socialization makes other people feel. And it's so, to me, myopically selfish to not think about how your socialization affects others or reading other people's social cues to get an idea of whether or not you've crossed a boundary. And I'm constantly having to check this, and I constantly check that I'm the kind of person that's making sure that I'm not blowing through people's boundaries just because I want something to happen, right? And so it's really, really, really key. And so when I made this album, it was partially that. It was also to do with, so there's the undercurrent of this social kind of element. There's also, of course, the COVID element, which layers on top of that perfectly, because there is now, as I was writing the album, and then even to this day, there's this idea that socially no one has any obligation to protect the rest of us. So everyone's unmasked except for those of us that get it. And so there's that sense of like, oh, socially sanctioned lack of care. No one feels an obligation to look after one another. No one has to because no one's being forced to. It's not socially acceptable to shame people for not wearing a mask. It is simply something that we do, but no one listens to it because no one cares. And then they wonder why certain people are opting out of the social circle. And then they go, well, good, those people don't deserve to be here anyway. But then when it comes time for these people to be supported in being protected from other forms of social pressure, where will we be? We will be back at the house, right? So each time you exclude a group of people because you don't care about making the event, the place, the friendship group, the anything accessible to those people will now not be there to defend you when the people of the social ilk that would exclude you turn on you. And so it's actually incredibly dangerous to set that up as a social precedent, right? And I could talk about this forever, but masking has to be one of the absolutely most emblematic ways that this operates. A complete lack of social community care in deciding that socially, emotionally, you don't have to mask because most people aren't masking, and that's peer pressure. And I was under the impression, maybe my black and white thinking is getting me here, but I was under the impression that the idea is you don't cave to peer pressure. You do the thing that is going to protect you. And I think sometimes people believe that social peer pressure, if you don't cave to it, puts you in danger. And, I wouldn't blame anyone for feeling that way. I learned that the hard way. When I didn't cave into social peer pressure, I learned that you were actually out in the cold in a lot of different ways, both in school, once I left school, and to do with a lot of the things I've already discussed. When you don't cave to peer pressure, you end up being the odd one out, and that leaves you vulnerable for targeting by people who decide that they are upset or feel judged by the fact that you're not doing the things they're doing, right? There is an ostracization when you decide not to cave to peer pressure. But then if you do cave to peer pressure
and it's something that is not beneficial to you or your boundaries, and then something bad happens to you, none of those people are there for you. And that social community that is made by peer pressure is not a social community that cares for one another. Because a social community that cares for one another is one that is oriented around looking after one another, instead of pressuring your peers to act the same way you do. So, dopamine as a small part, and the general idea of Diary of a Fangirl as a whole, has to do with the idea that sometimes escapism is a better form of socialization than socialization. Because at the very least with escapism, you can manage your boundaries. You can manage where you turn up, where you don't turn up. You can manage what you're going to tolerate and not tolerate. And sometimes in the real world, quote unquote, the real world, as if the people online are not real, or as if fandom is not real, or as if storytelling isn't real, or as if storytellers aren't real. Sometimes in the world where you go out and you go into these environments that consider themselves to be the pinnacle of what socialization is. You know, I live in a country where the pinnacle of socialization is getting blackout drunk for most of your college years in a city when you have no family and no friends until very, very, very late in the day at college. I could not be convinced even from a very young age that that was adequate socialization. And so there is so much to me mentally about Diary of a Fangirl that is about excavating and analyzing how fandom exists and how escapism exists as a sort of protective measure, but also how it can then also turn toxic, how it can also become something that is so deeply ingrained in your head, so much a part of your worldview that you can't see the forest for the trees. So it is really a very, very nuanced album, and Dopamine is a very, very nuanced view of the album as a whole, because Dopamine is a very nuanced view of the concept. It is simultaneously talking about internet overload and being too stuck in the weeds of escapism and it being bad escapism that's bad for your mental health, but also juxtaposing that with socialization outside of the internet, socialization outside of the phone, outside of the TV, outside of the media, socialization that's not considered to be external or escapist, that is also harmful to mental health, that is also based on FOMO, that is also based on what's considered socially cool, socially right, socially important way to live, that is considered legitimate over every other type of socialization, and how that can be harmful, and where to find the middle ground, where to find the inner peace. And it's no coincidence that the final track on Diary of a Fangirl is called Notepad, and it's about music. Because ultimately, my middle ground, my integration of Jamie and Violet, my integration of the good type of escapism indoors and the good type of external socialization outdoors really, really, really does have to do with making art. Making art and making music, finding my words and my thoughts and my feelings through my music, through my lyrics, through my songs, through singing, has always been the way I've regulated in my life. Like, part of Notepad has to do with the fact that there will be times in my life where the only thing I know I can do is sing. Like, I don't know that I can, write. I don't know that I can get out of bed. I don't know that I can be a social being. I don't know that I will ever be loved. I don't know anything except at the end of the day, no one has ever doubted that I can sing. I can sing. Whether or not I need to, brush up, whether or not I need to do my vocal warm-ups is a different matter. But at the end of the day, I know I can sing. And this is part of the reason that I'm so COVID cautious, is that COVID could take that away from me. And then I have fucking nothing. COVID could take my lungs away. COVID could take my muscular training in my vocal cords away. It could damage my vocal cords. I cannot afford to lose my voice. It is one of the only mental health anchors I have, because it was never in dispute. You could tell me that I wasn't as pretty as the other girls in school. You could tell me I was louder than the other girls. You could tell me I was disruptive. You could say I have anger issues. There were all of the different things people would say to me when I was a very young kid. But you know what they never said? Umnia is not talented. Umnia can't sing. They never said that. It was the one thing they could not deny. They couldn't deny it me. They could never deny I could sing. And they could never deny I could make music. Ever. Not when I was 4, not when I was 8, not when I was 12, not when I was 16, not when I was 20, not now that I'm 27. Never. No one's ever been able to doubt it. and it's the one thing I can bank on. So yeah, I am going to continue to wear a mask, and I am not going to be around any people who don't. I think I can't be on intimate terms with people who are not masking right now, because to me, it is my final frontier. If I lose my voice, if I in any way jeopardize or endanger my voice in any way, that's my last frontier gone. I don't know what my value is after that. And one might say, well, your value is inherent as a human. It's not just about like, oh, whether or not I'm valuable to the world. It's whether or not I have something of value to give myself. Singing gives me a resonant frequency within myself. When I sing, sometimes I'm singing in an empty house to myself. I'm not singing to perform. I'm not singing to practice. I am just singing to align myself. It is my regulator. It is something that gives me complete regulation in myself, in my body, in my ability, in everything. My songs, my singing, my voice, the way that my voice works, the way that I sing, is so grounding to me, with an audience, without an audience, more without an audience than with an audience, that I would be furious if I caught COVID and I lost my voice, and I could have prevented that, right? I'm a little worried about my gig this Sunday because it is not a masked gig and very few people may be masking at the gig. But luckily I have other mitigating things I can do that I will take with me. And of course I will mask before and after. So it will not be as big a deal as all that. I will make sure that I'm protected. But I take all of these precautions for that very reason. So I hope that helps you understand a little bit more about dopamine. I think it'll help you pick up on any Easter eggs I may have forgotten, the messages and the different bits and pieces I put in there. Hopefully all the Easter eggs that are in there you will now understand a bit more clearly because of the context that I've explained. It was so fun to make. It was a nightmare to make, but it was so fun to make. And the people involved were just such talented people. And, you know, in terms of what the future holds, because I think that's another thing I really want to talk about on the pod today, if we're doing a dopamine spectacular, is going forward. I mean, I know Diary of a Fangirl came out a year ago, right? I think it was 2023. I can't remember because I always move on so quickly. I'm pretty sure it was May 2023. So it was about a year ago, right? Now I have to check because I'm going. It was 2022. No, it wasn't 2022. Dopamine was summer of 2022 or autumn of 2022. But I'm pretty sure Diary of a Fangirl was about a year ago. I have been trying to think of what I want to do next, and I have so many ideas. I have so many projects. I have Nostalgia Radio Volume 2, half sitting, half waiting for a revamp. I'm not sure whether I'm going to do that or not. But I'm almost in a state of I need a creative moment to breathe. It sounds like, oh, well, I'm so burnt out. I'm not burnt out per se. I just need there to be one thing I want to do that makes itself sound so much stronger, so much cooler than everything else. That's what Diary of a Fangirl was at one point. I was just like, this is the coolest thing I could do with my time. In the meantime, I'm pretty sure that I am now going to start a series where I release some old demos. And some of that is going to be public and some of that is going to be just for patrons. I may just start by sending the demos to patrons, and then the patrons can tell me what the best songs are within the demos, and then those can be ones that I potentially bring to a wider audience on my platforms. But ultimately, I am going to basically meditate on what the next steps musically are. It may be essentially just going through and doing singles. I've missed doing singles for a while. I think I want to go back to doing just one song at a time. I have a lot of different inspirations and ideas for that. Not anything that I've made and put down yet, but I have tons of kind of reference playlists and thoughts and mood boards and stuff. And I have one kind of really, really obscure idea that I might act on that has to do with kind of becoming a monk again, the way I was back with the K-pop covers, and just releasing something every week or every 2 weeks. Not just a song, but like a kind of visual something
we'll see. I don't want to overwork myself, because I always do this. I go, I need to do double or triple or quadruple what I need to do in order to make it like the best thing that anyone's ever seen ever. And it's like, it doesn't necessarily have to be that. You guys are incredibly accommodating of my artistic integrity and timing, and so I want to give something good as well as creating something spectacular. So I hope that as I start to figure out what that's going to be, that kind of takes shape as I'm kind of releasing demos and stuff. I think I'm going to need the summer to have a think about it. We'll see where I am after the summer. But yeah, it has been awesome working on Dopamine, awesome working on the album. Like, the crew that we had was just fantastic. Go through the credits and have a look at the work and the people that were involved. Special shout out, of course, to Anna Vengarte, otherwise known as Anna Shakur, for putting it all together and for pushing it to be what it is. It was brilliant to make, and it was so much fun. And I now just have to kind of take my repose and work out what the next steps are. But yeah, I hope that's been a lot of really fun context on Dopamine and on the project as a whole, and Diary of a Fangirl specifically. It has been a real pleasure to share it with you. And as this kind of album cycle comes to a close, it's crazy to say it that way, but yeah, as this album cycle comes to a close, yeah, I just feel this overwhelming sense of accomplishment and peace and thanks, and also integration. Like I said, my Jamie and my Violet are one now, and it feels really good to be one person. You know, at the end of the album, just as at the start of the album, I end up coming back to being Nina or Umnia, as it's kind of implied. In Notepad, I am one person again. And these two factions of myself have found their equilibrium. So yeah, I love you guys very much. I hope that has been fun to listen to, and I will see you next week. Bye.
Hello, and welcome to Sophisticulture. I am your host, Umnia, and we're going to start by reading the articles from this week from Obscura. You can find them at umnialneal.com as per usual. They will form the basis of the discussion today, and I will go through each of them. So, we'll start with article number 1. The trolley problem, brought to you by the general election. I'm going to start by saying that if everyone who wanted to vote independent and green actually did, we'd finally be out of the two-party system. Finally, we'd be in a time of flux where we actually get to hold our elected officials to their promises, constituency by constituency, instead of them banding together into their parties, which are basically unions at this point, intent on protecting the interests of the career MPs that are in them. Multiple of my international friends that have visited the UK in the past year have remarked on our decline with a level of grief I usually reserve for my favourite characters dying. COVID killed our essential workers, and Brexit killed our economy. Our country is being run by emigres, and then these same people are turned on by the government and put under undue stress and hatred while they run the essential services and jobs of our country. Our healthcare system is being sold for parts, and our immaculate science, research and education sector allowed our COVID response to be run by the economy and a behavioral psychologist, as if we could manipulate the population into certain actions. Well, most people have stopped masking, so I guess they were right. Better to manipulate behavior than save lives in a dying empire, I guess. Our infrastructure is meant to be this shining beacon worthy of international envy, and yet we have let our COVID response decay into a war of attrition that the British public are losing. All this, and we allow our institutions to be sidetracked by a wild goose chase around trans rights, stripping youth of vital infrastructure because a couple of right-wing kooks were allowed to influence the only major governmental investigation done into the issue, and let them get rid of any studies from the research that might have finally put the matter to rest. Instead, now children are being put through human rights violating guidelines in order to receive incredibly mundane and previously positively researched care that they were happily receiving before, all because a couple of doctors can't tell the difference between depression caused by cultural transphobia and depression caused by alleviating gender dysphoria. These are our brightest minds, folks. Lord help us, and Lord help the children. And now we're expected to vote, as the same boomer news editors allow the same bad faith arguments from the same milkshake-coated twats to derail all good conversation around how we restore this country into something that benefits all who contribute within its community and all who intend to when they arrive. Of course, these boomers, through their hacking coughs from their scarred, untreated, long COVID-ridden lungs, do not care at all about changing this conversation, and then wonder, panicked, why their pocketbooks and hedge funds become more and more stringent and confined. Their xenophobia is overriding their good sense, even their good capitalist sense, as they follow the guidance of the stupid trolley problem politic of decades past and wish for better results. The definition of insanity. There's a way to stop the trolley killing people, and it's by mitigating the conditions that lead to the trolley barreling down the track with no brakes on. Note how in every single permutation of the trolley problem, it always has a track-changing lever that works, but never breaks. The trolley problem is emblematic of scarcity politics, and it's the politics and economy of extraction. I always ask myself in times of these kinds of myopia, what did we used to do? What if, hear me out, you traded with countries whose resources you had instead of stealing from them? What if, hear me out, you developed resources within your own country so you were a viable trading partner? What if, oh God, hear me out, that were enough? This Jenny Lex, reject the trolley problem and find a solution that restores the brakes to the damn thing or simply stops it at the previous station. No more scarcity politics. It's time for common sense to prevail. Article number 2. La Quimera was about nothing. This will have spoilers, so I would suggest skipping a couple minutes. This will have spoilers for the movie. La Quimera was about nothing? No! La Quimera was about property rights and extraction. I thought we all got it. It was pretty clear to me. You know, the juxtaposition of the abandoned station and the unopened graves, that potential through hard work can be negative and positive too. The police not being able to do their job properly. The competition dressing up as police who look like they're doing their job properly. The shadowy German art collector, read gentrifier, taking public resources and utilizing criminals, privatizing the profits for herself. The constant, does it belong to everyone or no one discourse. The greed! The returning motif of the grave robbers feeling like they're pirates and outlaws, which gives their lives meaning, but at the end of the day, they're just petty thieves and they turn up on Mam's boat running the same petty grift, and then the lead throws the priceless decapitated head into the ocean, thinking he did something, but really he got rid of the one chance to make a check, aligning himself once again with the moneyed class and leaving his friends to rot the same way they did to him in jail, and leaving the statue head to erode in the ocean, making the German collector millions in the process, only for his greed to lead him to his own demise, and his gift clearly being a form of self-delusion fortified by his own greed. Maybe this last point is up for debate. That's not nothing. If it helps, Arthur, she never belonged to you either. And if I had a dime for every time Josh O'Connor played a rich kid pretending to be poor in 2024, I'd have 2 dimes. Okay, final article. A letter to my future children, this pride. This one is just... This is a very, 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 very down the line, very simple one. Dear future kids, who I hope are twins, but honestly, I just hope you're here and alive. I am sure I'm creating you into a world that's a lot better than the one we have now. I'm sure because I'll make sure to be a part of making it. Just a quick note to say that I'm going to love you whether you're the hettest, cissest, straightest person on planet Earth, or you're queer in ways I haven't even fathomed. Because my purest hope for you is that every room you walk into, you are the baddest bitch to ever be there. I don't need you to conform to whatever system remains of the one I currently have now. It's sick. Filled with people who say they hate things and then have dubious Google search histories. You still have Google? Well, back in my day, I don't need you to contort to fit whatever remnants of old, sick, constrictive, extractive systems are left when you arrive. This is a world that picks and chooses the bad and the good based on stock prices. God forbid you ever base your life, your freedom, the way you love and live on a fucking stock price. Santa Claus has more of a right to be real than the fucking NASDAQ. I need you to be happy. I need you to feel fulfilled as soon as possible because time is the only non-renewable resource, and I need you to feel comfortable as soon as possible for as long as possible in as many of the controllable ways as possible. There are going to be so many ways this world is uncomfortable for you. And I'll do my best to get rid of the stupid ways, but I can't get rid of hot days, or a piece of something stuck in your teeth, or rejection, unrequited love, or not being able to find the right retort in an argument. Mum can't fix these things. So at the very least, figure out how you'd like to walk the earth for now, and when it changes for you, change it. Divorce that from any expectation or system that is out there. The world will have to bend towards you. I need you to be waking up in the morning comfortable and going to sleep comfortable. I need the reflection in the mirror to feel comfortable. This is the only way you're going to find comfortable love, comfortable friendship, is if you know how it feels. The world will be difficult enough. Do not take up arms against yourself too. Mum loves you so, so much. I love you so much. I'm already talking to you and I don't even know who your other parent is yet. Or if you have one, that's how much I love you. Okay, so those are 3 articles I released this week. I usually only release 2, but I really had the trolley problem on my mind and I was like, this needs to be released really soon. So I'll go in reverse order. It's Pride. I wanted to write something about Pride. I was thinking a lot about kind of generations and the concept of generations and the concept of like making a world. Who are we making the next world for? And yeah, obviously my children, but like, even if I don't have kids, the concept of the article still stands, which is that we have to think in terms of the world that we want there to be a generation of kids completely ignorant to what we're going through now. The same way that we don't truly understand what it was like to be around in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, when rights were so different, when situations were so different. We don't just fight to retain the rights we have. We fight to make a world where even the rights we don't have now feel like they've been there the whole time for the next generation, right? And especially I was thinking about this because I was thinking about all the generations of Palestinian children that were not able to be queer openly or just because they were not allowed to grow up, and who were just killed by the IDF, who were just like murdered before they were ever given a chance to work out who they loved. They were ever given a chance to love openly and freely. They were not allowed to live in their homeland under a situation that was peaceful and free and be grown up and get to adulthood and be queer and out and proud. And they weren't able to even fight. They're not even able currently to fight for their own rights because they're busy fighting for their right to live first. Like, the biggest threat to their lives is not actually their community not accepting their queerness. It's the Israeli military who want them all gone off the land. So I think about that all the time, and that's part of the world I refer to when I say we're creating a world better, so that if I ever have queer kids, I don't ever want them to have to think about whether or not I'm going to be on board with how they wish to present or who they wish to love, right? Who they can't help but love is really, honestly, the beauty and the mystery of life. And I wanted there to be something sitting there, just even if there's people reading it now, to realize that like the concept of your parents not getting it is actually something that you should grieve in them. It's their loss that they don't get to experience kind of the expansiveness of your comfortability, and the fact that anybody would need you to live a life any less comfortable as possible is actually an added undue stress on that the world gives to queer people that doesn't need to be there, because there's already so many other things that are uncontrollably annoying. Like, the last thing that we need to be doing is creating more reasons for life to be uncomfortable. So that was the reason for writing that. And I think especially during Pride, I get this feeling because what we're essentially talking about is a facet of human experience that has to do, like, almost explicitly with relationships amongst one another and love. And the idea that there is a facet of relationships and love that we have all societally, globally decided is something we get to dunk on and litigate against and harm people for and commit violence in the name of is like obviously dumb, but like it there's a level to it in my head that just, there is no other reason for it other than a capitalistic reason. There is no reason that humans would maintain that level of disgust unless it was baked into institutions that maintain a certain level, a certain structure of power. And the only way that power would maintain itself over centuries like this is if it was tied to capital. and tied to the interests of incredibly wealthy, greedy people. Because otherwise these things fall out of favor so quickly. No one can withhold or withstand these levels of phobias just off the dome. It's not an inherent thing to the human nature to be repulsed by the idea of what queerness, like it is the most mundane form of expression. Is the relationships you choose to have, who you choose to love, and how you choose to dress. It's like the idea that we politicize that has only, in my head, can only be a phobia born of a political economic drive to, a colonial drive to reproduce and a economic drive to reproduce and to maintain heterosexual power structures only so that they can have more kids to churn into the factories, right? Mad to me. And it doesn't, it's the testament to queerness that it could not be stomped out. It is so inherent to human nature, and capitalism is so not inherent to human nature. This idea of aligning interests of the aligning morality with the global interests of the very, very, very wealthy is so antithetical to human nature that queerness has prevailed, and rich people fade in and out. There's not the same group of rich people over centuries and centuries. Very few of them last centuries and centuries. The most rich people change all the time, and that tells you that those things are not naturally born things. Those are not human natural phenomenon, but queerness is. It's very, very, very natural to the human experience. So yeah, I hope that if I do have kids, when I do have kids, they're in a world where they take a lot of these, they understand where these rights came from, but they take a lot of the rights they do have and all the extra rights we hopefully win for them by the time they arrive as being for granted, to be defended for sure, but they take them for granted. That's kind of what you want. I like the idea that there are kids growing up now who have just never lived in a world where gay people haven't been allowed to get married, right? And I would remind everybody, a fun little reminder during Pride is that there are still issues and accessibility issues around queer people trying to get married because of disability benefits, and the ways that disability benefits work are discriminatory, and part of that, it means that there are fewer marriage rights for queer people who are disabled and who need disability allowance, who need disability aid. So I always bear that in mind when we talk about marriage equality, and also on top of that, marriage equality is not a global right yet, and that has so much to do with the scar that colonialism has left on the rest of the world. And again, just as it's taken forever for the seats of international power to finally acknowledge and or just ever so slightly allow queerness to exist in its natural state, it will take a long while before a lot of these other countries get to that point. But it makes me laugh. It makes me laugh so hard when people are like, see, it's because we're progressive and these people are savages. No. What happened is you ruined their countries and you enforced your morality that up until 10 minutes ago was the same one, right, as the one that you're saying now is so backward. You're no more progressive than those countries. All you are is able, under all the resources, to fight for those rights, because you have gained those rights and gained those freedoms to fight for those rights on the backs of the wealth and the destabilization of other people's countries. You only have your rights because all of those other countries don't have their rights, okay? Happy Pride. Those countries don't have those rights because that's what props up your country being able to be free enough and wealthy enough and moneyed enough and full of enough greedy people that there is an incentive for them to just allow you to fight for your rights long enough and maybe every now and then give them to you. That is seriously all it is. And the idea that there are not people in every single country you think is so backward who are queer, who fight for queer rights, who are getting arrested over queer rights, they are not under, like, if you can imagine how many people are gay within your general vicinity, whether you're in a city or in a country, there are just as many gay people, there are just as many queer people in every corner of the globe, and they are doing what they can under the systems imposed by your country, imposed by the UK, imposed by the US, imposed by Australia, imposed by the Western world onto the rest of the global South. They are doing the best they can under the circumstances. And the fact that those same systems that built those thought processes turn around and say, you see, this is why we get to keep harming them, and this is why we get to keep bombing them into the Stone Age, because they don't do the one thing we did 10 minutes ago. That's why we get to do it. No, no, it's the other way around. They can't do the thing you're doing because you keep doing this. Anyway, so that's Pride. I was just mad that a lot of people were talking about La Chimera, it was about nothing. And Missy Moo, like the screening I saw of La Chimera was at the Picture House, and they had to put a whole a whole little clip at the beginning with the director saying, you know, this is like this, the movie's like an archaeological dig, and you know, you have to find the story within the film. And I'm going, you had to, at the beginning, I'm watching this thing and I'm going, oh no, people didn't get it, did they? People watched the movie and they didn't get the movie, and that's the issue. And now you're putting a whole thing at the beginning with the director saying it's actually, you know, it's an archaeological dig, and you'll discover that if you give it enough attention, you'll discover the story. And it's like, I didn't think people had to be told that about films. I thought the whole point was that we knew that, like, there's subtext, and like sometimes films are ambiguous, but I bet you it's because it was just, you know, Josh O'Connor's in it, and so a whole bunch of general public people were going, oh well, let's go see the La Chimera film, let's go see it. And then they're like, well, that film was about nothing. It was not about nothing. It was about property rights, and it was about a whole bunch of other things. There was a lot going on in that film. No, it was not about nothing. You guys make me sick. You guys make me sick. Get into some interesting films. Oh my God. Anyway, if you've managed to catch La Chimera, I'm sure you agree. And if you have not caught it and you managed to find it somewhere, please do watch it. It's really beautiful. It's beautiful. It needs time. It needs you really engaged. It needs you ready and engaged. It honestly, it was just, I went because I knew that I was going to cover it. I don't think I would have gone if I didn't actually I would have, because there was something really captivating about the trailer and the premise of like grave digging kind of thing, and it's honestly just a fun you know the films where it's just fun to just sit with the characters and like watch this thing unfold. It's that. And then if you're just receptive to the freaking story, there are multiple stories going on, and there are multiple points being made, and I think it's a fantastic film. Anyway, finally, the last thing on the list is the trolley problem. So politics in the UK has gotten weird. I don't know if you've heard, but the cool thing about this election is that pretty much everyone agrees that Labour is going to have a landslide victory, because the Conservatives have not had an election for like 3 or 4 different leaders, and they've just completely driven the country into the ground. And finally, we're doing a Jenny Lex. My country is so obsessed with making these little contractions of words. So the general election becomes the Jenny Lex. Or the Jenny Leck. Some people are doing Jenny Leck. It's become a bit of a shit show. I don't really care, because I know I'm voting Green. And I know that Green, I've read the Green manifesto, and I know my local electives, my local candidate for MP, my Green candidate for MP. And I know that he basically is just kind of lockstep with the Green Party manifesto, which is essentially Green New Deal, full stop. But a very, very liberal Green New Deal that believes in like, it's the only party I've seen that has a proper stance on a ceasefire in Gaza, and for Israel to be held accountable for all of the things that it has done. And Hamas, they say also Hamas should be held accountable, which I agree insofar as there are war crimes that Hamas has committed. But on top of that, what no one mentions about the kind of, Israel and Hamas need to be held responsible, is that Hamas is not a government. It's considered a governmental party, but it's also considered a terrorist organization, and you can't be both. However, I would argue the Israeli military and the Israeli government happens to be both by virtue of its history, because the Israeli government and the Israeli military were built from 2 or 3 different factions of terrorist groups in the 40s. So it's this weird kind of middle ground where Hamas's actions seem to have been incredibly extreme responses to the fact that there had been peaceful protests 2 years prior where people had been shot and killed. And then there was a whole bunch of escalations by the Israeli military done in silence leading up to October 7th. So there was not a ceasefire on October 7th. There was, on top of that, a siege on Gaza for the last, decade, 2 decades, a complete blockade, stopping them from being from seeing the rest of the world. And the one statistic that damns them all is that Hamas is 80% orphans. Most of the people in Hamas have no surviving family. And the only reason that is, and this was before they were formed, the people that form Hamas have no family. Like 80% of them have no family. And that is because the Israeli military killed their family. And you can't say, the Israeli military killed their family because they're terrorists. No, prior to the foundation of Hamas, this was the case, which means that Israel was killing their families just to get them off the land. And you can see it if you actually listen to Israeli politics. If you're someone who is actually engaged with the issue, you can hear that actually the fundamental goal here is not to eradicate terrorism. It is not to eradicate extremism. What it is to get Palestinians off the land, to clear all of the Palestinian land, reclaim it. They consider it reclaiming it. It's not reclaimed, it's claiming it, it's colonizing it. But they consider it a reclamation of Israeli land, even though they have no right to it. And then on top of that, they have a plan for extending. They are currently, no one's talking about this, bombing Lebanon with white phosphorus and bombing their neighbors constantly. And they go, we're fighting terrorism. And it's like, most of these countries they are talking about, they're fighting terrorism. The evidence of there being people within terrorist cells that had anything to do with October 7th is tentative at best, and we know the record of the Israeli military when it comes to telling the truth. So, do I feel a little bit like the conversation is not an informed conversation when parties say something like, the leaders of Israel and Hamas need to be held accountable? Yes. But do I understand that on the context of the ICC or the ICJ, whichever court is currently charging these people with war crimes, that you need to do both in order to investigate the issue at the very least and to have a proper investigation done of the entire events, including October 7th, which there is multiple evidence for Israel killing its own civilians using the, Hannibal Directive? There's that whole aspect of it that's just like needs to be investigated, and everyone's saying, well, Israel will do the investigation. Why would you let Israel do an investigation into itself? That is simply not fair. It's not something that, like, you wouldn't allow Hamas to do an investigation of itself. So there needs to be international intervention and an investigation. But the problem is that they will find a lot of information that is a problem to the current narrative that allows Israel to ethnically cleanse Palestinians from Gaza. And they're currently now also starting a very, very vicious settler regime ethnic cleansing in the West Bank. No one is safe. No Palestinian that has remained in Palestine is safe. And there is no sense of a two-state solution because there is now a faction within Israel that is so right-wing, that is so Judean, that is so like, we deserve all of this land, and we deserve the Golan Heights, and we deserve parts of Lebanon, and we deserve parts of Egypt. And they are a monster that's grown out of control. And they're using Netanyahu as a scapegoat. But at the end of the day, this is the fundamental founding philosophy of Israel. Like, these are the same factions that founded the thing in the first place, that founded this project in the first place. Gaza has oil. America's not going to stop them. So I need a party at the very least that is talking about holding these people accountable. But I don't have the party that I can vote for that is going to do the full job of helping dismantle colonial entities everywhere and reinstating indigenous rights everywhere. But I don't have that party yet. But the Green Party is the closest thing to it. So when everybody says, if you want the best case scenario, you should be voting for Labour. No, the best case scenario out of all of the parties right now is the Green Party. And they're not even close to the kind of politics I would like to see out of people on the progressive end of things. But at the very least, they're talking about protecting the planet. They're talking about restitutive care and protection of the planet, and on top of that, they're talking about holding Israel accountable. That is more than a lot of the parties and a lot of the candidates are willing to say right now. So they are getting my vote. End of story. I don't want to hear any more, well, if you do the Conservatives, I'm not even sure there's going to be a Conservative Party in the next 5 to 6 years. I'm pretty sure they're going to implode. The moment they put Rishi Sunak in power, you could see the stress fractures starting to occur in the party as some of the virulent racists were like, how do we have an Indian running our party right now? You know, like even if they come back with a vengeance, I'm still not voting for them, and I will vote my conscience no matter what. There is simply no way you can get me to vote for Labour because you tactically, I don't want to tactically anything. My tactical vote is voting my conscience. My tactical vote is using my vote to vote for the people who actually believe in the things I believe to the highest degree. And if we all did that, we'd have the kind of politics we want. This idea that like, oh, well, the country is just inherently right-wing and so we need to be careful is a complete lie. I think a lot of people are doing the same mathematics and coming to the conclusion that the right-wing parties are the best bet. And if you vote for Labour in this election, you're doing a similar thing, unless you're voting for a Labour MP that is progressive. You are voting essentially for a party, even if you think you're doing it tactically, you're voting for a party that has aligned itself with the general logic that the right wing of this country is more prevalent than everybody else. I don't think that's true. I think they can also, if we had parties that could actually front up against Labour and pull them back to the left, could start actually convincing the general public, not just that left-wing politics has any place in this country and that it can win, but also that, like, I was listening to Sheila Fogarty on a drive back from rehearsal the other day, and I was listening to where she personally was in terms, and you know, some people talk about Sheila Fogarty as being really balanced, but she still is caught up in a lot of old beliefs about this country, and this idea that the whole country feels that way, that I can believe. But I don't think that those people cannot be convinced of something else. We're just not bothering to do so. We're just moving towards their position. Everyone's moving towards the right wing. And then we let fricking Mr. Milkshake covered mouthpiece set the terms of the bloody debate. Oh, it's an immigration election. It's the immigration election. It's always been the bloody immigration election with bigots. It's always the bloody immigration election. You want it to be the immigration election? Okay, let's stop all immigration to this country. See where your National Health Service goes. What's mad is that this, I can just tell you exactly what happens. If we follow Nigel Farage down this rabbit hole, what we end up with is no NHS, no public services, absolutely zero staff anywhere, and a complete collapse of our economy, and the entirety of our country, including the bankers, broke as fuck. The bankers will move to Hong Kong, they'll move to Singapore, they'll move to wherever, and this place will become a wasteland. Because immigrants are running our country right now. I don't mean immigrants are running our country. They are running the vital infrastructure of our country. And beating on them just for a check, just for a fun little, fast little political check, is selling our country down the river. You are essentially saying, I want the majority of British people who cannot leave Britain, who cannot use their second passport or their intense wealth to leave, we're going to leave them to die, basically. We're going to leave them with no services, no nothing, no money, nothing. We're going to leave them to rot on British soil, and we're all going to leave. We're going to extract it for all it's worth, have all of these, because at the end of the day, ask any of these guys that want to fix or curb immigration whether they're actually going to do the jobs the immigrants do. And the answer is always no. The answer is always no. The immigrants are not the ones taking away people's jobs. They are the ones doing the jobs no British person wants to do. Period. And in return, you have some of the most amazing businesses that open up, some of the most amazing services being run. Infrastructure, the British infrastructure right now would be absolute toast without immigrants. Not just people working for British infrastructure, but people running British infrastructure. The number of post offices I've been into that is being run by people who have clearly immigrated here, who are running the post office in a way I have never, ever experienced under British ownership. Ever. We just simply wouldn't have that without people coming into this country. I'm so fucking tired of this conversation.
We would not have the luxuries we have in this country without immigrants. We don't have any luxuries in this country without immigrants. End of story. And I call them emigres, I call them expats, because they are. They are expatriates of another country who have decided to come here, and for whoever knows what reason, because it is the ghetto over here. You know, at the very least in their home countries, they had family and infrastructure. And maybe if they didn't have that, they were maybe going to find that here. Just barely. But our infrastructure is also ass. And they come here and they build it for us. You know? They just want immigrants to be in a position of precarity and constant extraction. They want to do to immigrants what they're currently doing to international students and just charge them out the wazoo for everything and use them as an extractive resource and make them essentially economic slaves to the British government, which is just freaking disgusting. Like, it's just disgusting. Anyway, yeah, I'm voting Green. Everybody, every British person in the reach of my voice should vote Green too, or Independent, or Progressive Labour. Do not vote tactically. Vote to your conscience. There is no reason to vote tactically, in my opinion. That's, you know, I'm not telling you how to vote. But in my opinion, there is no reason to vote tactically in this election. Every vote should be a message sent. Every single vote should be a message sent to the government, sent to Labour, sent to the Conservatives, sent to the Independents, sent to the Green Party, that we want a politic that works for everyone, not just what works for now for everyone, what works for the bigots for now, what works for the rich people for now. Because the thing is that even the things those people want to do will harm them in the long run too. Look at Brexit. Look at Brexit. These guys thought this was going to be their freaking meal ticket. They thought they were going to make money on the concept of Brexit, and they are floundering. Look at Rishi Sunak. He is sweating because numbers have gone missing from his ledger because of this decision. Because of this, David Cameron is the same. Why do you think that man came back into the government? Because he saw a sinking ship and his money was being affected. Why do you think they was changing leadership every 5 minutes? Because all of their money was being affected by a choice they made. They were being sold. They literally, the dumb asses that they are. These are not bright people. They allowed Nigel Farage to lead them by the nose to absolute hell and take us all with them. And they're going, oh my God, why is my portfolio? Why is this? Oh my God, Brexit's been so... We were all warning you beforehand, and more importantly, like, you guys keep making the same mistakes. At the end of the day, and I keep saying this, and I don't know when it's ever going to sink into the public consciousness, but at the end of the day, Rishi Sunak doesn't have money without people. You don't make money out of nowhere. It may feel that way when you get a mortgage made out of thin air and when you get loans out of thin air. It may feel like money is simply just something that's made up. But at the end of the day, what makes it real is what you extract from the people. And if you extract so much from the people that they don't even get a chance to recover long enough to have enough for you to extract some more, yeah, your bank is going to suffer. Your bank account is going to suffer. Your bottom line is going to suffer. This recession that is most certainly freaking happening, that they are all pretending is not happening. America, I'm speaking to you too. This recession they want to pretend is not happening, that is 100% how it's not a recession yet. The record growth, but it is a recession, honey. You killed millions of people. Everybody's mortgages are going up. Cost of living crisis is a cover for basically a 2007-2008-esque recession. And it's the worst recession. It's the worst recession. And I'm going to call it now. Watch me be right in about 5 years. This is going to be a recession on par with the Great Recession, the Great Depression. At the Great Depression of the 20s. That's what it's going to end up being. And we're all going to have walked through it. And we're going, why am I so broke? Why am I having to ask for mutual aid? Why am I having to ask for help with my with my rent? Why am I moving back in with my family? We're all asking these questions because we're being gaslit. This is a recession. This is a depression. It literally is. It's an economic depression. They don't want you to know that because then you'll start making moves accordingly. Instead, we're all moving as if things have just gotten a little bit hard. Things are really hard right now. Or things are a little bit austere. It was the pandemic. Yeah, if it was the pandemic, fine. And it was partially caused by the pandemic because you killed a bunch of essential workers that were the engine of the economy. Ugh. Y'all make me so mad. Anyway, that's the end of the podcast now. That is the end of the podcast. And I sound so sick, even though I'm totally not sick, because I'm just really congested because of my allergies. I would just like to say this pride, if you can wear a mask, wear a mask. Protect the disabled amongst the queer community. There are a higher number of immunocompromised people within the queer community, not only because of HIV and AIDS, but because it is a community that is historically, health-wise, left in the dust, not protected. And so when you wear a mask in queer spaces, it's not just revolutionary, it is flagging. You are showing other queer people that you are a safe queer person to be around. Please wear your mask. And on top of that, if anybody queer that knows me, that is in my personal circle, would like to come out and say that they have a crush on me, please, thank you. Okay, love you, bye.
Hello, and welcome back to the Sophisticulture Podcast. My name is Umnia, and if you are hearing this, I am now back from the dead. I don't look it, but I am back from the dead. So my voice sounds different because it is different. It will get better, but I am still just a bit sick, which, it is what it is. Luckily, not COVID, or if it is COVID, it's a very sneaky COVID, because I've so far tested very, very negative on a bunch of things, even though I have been so pedantic about my care. And I think it's either that I don't have COVID, or if I do, I have taken such great mitigations that it's not showing up on tests. So, yay! Let's clap for that. But it does mean that my voice is a little bit shot. I wasn't coughing too much. It's just kind of like the inflammation. So I am indeed like 2 weeks late to telling you guys how my gig went. So we are going to start with my gig, and then we're going to talk about Sundance London and Your Monster and the surprise film, which I is now going to be coming out next week in the UK, and it came out just yesterday in the US. And the surprise film that I watched, you should not watch. If you are a fan of anything I do or any of my opinions, I'm telling you, don't go and see that movie. And then we'll end on a nice light note with some discussion of Luca Guadagnino films, because I saw 3 of them last week. 2 of which I'd never seen before, 1 of which I had seen a couple times, and then of course Challenges I have already seen, which is the 4th one that is the 4 Luca Guadagnino films I've watched. And I'd like to talk kind of about like the pattern I see in his filmmaking, or the lack of pattern I see in his filmmaking, and why I think that is. And I will also be excoriating the director of the surprise film that we will be talking about. And if you've read the title or the thumbnail, then you know what surprise film I'm referring to. But if you're just listening to the audio, and maybe you've not even looked at the title, maybe you don't even know what the title is, you're just like, oh, new Omnia, great, fantastic. You get a nice little Easter egg because you don't get to know what we're talking about next. So let's start with the gig. So I've actually already recorded 30 minutes of this podcast that had no audio. So I am retreading old steps and reevaluating what I said in those 30 minutes to try and distill them down to the essence. So I had not gigged prior to 2 Sundays ago. I had not gigged in 10 years. I said 7. It was actually 10. Because I stopped in 2014 because the vibes on the London circuit were really off. And I think they were off because I think they were off because I never really had a place in the London scene. And I think even if I were to turn up on the London scene now, I think Chapel Roan is closer to a type of artistry I recognize, and she's only managed to break through in 2024. And London is always behind. London is not really on the cutting edge of the music scene generally. It'll be on the cutting edge of the music scene in genres, in like niche genres, or genres that have to do with like not pop. But when it comes to pop, London tends to be behind. Especially, you can see it in the fact that Charlie XCX is only just getting her flowers, and she was
a myth and a legend in terms of the independent music scene for me when I started. And I am now 27. I started when I was 14. So she has been around for a while, and she's only really getting her flowers in 2024. That should tell you kind of, the London scene has known about Charlie XCX the entire time. The rave scene, the club scene, all of it have known about her for forever. But to break into mainstream in the UK, you have to follow a very specific musical path. It's a very Dua Lipa path, which shout out to Dua Lipa, I love her. It's a very vocalist on a club track by a guy, and that was what Charlie XCX tried to do for a long time. The pop, not even the hyperpop. Hyperpop is very different. The pop, the being on other people's songs, and it worked for a little bit, but it doesn't create long-term stars often. And we don't really foster the next generation of Adeles. We don't really foster the next generation of any singer you can think of, your Jessie J's, your Dua Lipas, your Charlie XCX's. We don't really foster female talent in pop. Ray had to leave her label and go independent before anybody would see the value of what she was doing, and she had been doing it for years. Like Ray, I have been hearing on records for forever. So the whole thing is odd, and the London scene is odd, but you find your people. And I think I'm starting to find my people, not just in terms of the awesome people that I found that helped me with my gig, Natalie, Phoebe, Demi, shout out to all of you, Michelle, Demi's partner, shout out to you, you're a rock star, and my friends like Alicia, Celeste, who came all the way from Germany to see me, and of course my mother, who supported me, and all the people in the bar that were like, where have you been? Why did it take you 7 years to gig again? Why didn't you gig for 7 years? We think you're so awesome, you're so great. So supportive, so kind, everybody. It's not that London is unfriendly to me. Although when I was younger, London was very unfriendly to me. It was not unfriendly to me last Sunday or the Sunday before last. It was a very, very kind, very nurturing, very, very, very beautiful space. But in terms of where I fit in the London scene, everybody has different references for what they think I'm doing. Some people think I'm doing something that's very soulful. Some people think I'm doing something that's more musical theatre. Some people think I'm doing pop. Some people think I'm not really doing pop. Some people think I fit into pop lineups, but then the lineups are more singer-songwriter. No one can work out where to put me. And because they can't work out where to put me, for a long time, they didn't put me, right? And even now, it's hard for me to get blog placements. It's hard for me to get... It's hard for me to find my place where I can start from the bottom and work up, because no one can really work out what I do. And I write, I produce, I sing. You guys know this. But to explain that to everybody, that I do all of those different things, it kind of starts overloading the system a little bit, and people don't know where to put me. And I don't think it helps. I don't think the hex code of my skin helps. But then, there are so many people of color within the music industry that make fantastic careers. And the thing is it would be easier for me if I niched down. It would be easier for me if I picked a genre, worked out what genre I wanted to be a part of, and figured out how to niche down in that regard and started there. But that is just simply not how the art comes out of me. I have tried for my entire career, because of this very issue, to pigeonhole myself into, well, I do pop jazz, or I do pop soul, or I do pop funk, and it always ends up skewing off somewhere by the end of the record, or skewing off somewhere by the end of the second song. I can't. I just make pop music, and it comes in a million different shades and colors. I can't niche down. I'm sorry, Omnia, I can't niche down. I know you really want me to, but I can't. I really can't. I am inspired endlessly. And so I make everything because I can't help it. And so it's been incredibly difficult, and it's actually been a source of depression, which is so silly that it's been a source of depression. I'm like, well, maybe that's because actually what I make is trash. I'm not actually making something that's easily explainable, so it's probably not good. because if if it feel good, you could explain at least what was good about it. And I can explain what's good about my music if I'm not like crippled by self-doubt. I can go, well, it has this, or you can enjoy that, but it's never really something that anybody can go, oh yes, that would fit in with my playlist. I will say the one unifying element of everything across, well, who is your audience? Well, what kinds of playlists do you get playlisted by? The one unifying factor seems to be the queer community. Like, that's the unifying factor. Queer people are the people that like my music. Queer people are the people that playlist my music. I just got put on a playlist that's doing incredibly well for me called The Lesbian Pop Renaissance Is Not White. And I want to stand up right now and say, listen, I don't want to get cancelled for queer baiting down the road. So I want to say right now, I'm not a lesbian yet. So let's just all of us, do I like women? Have a look at my reposts, my silent reposts, and that will be that on that. But I'm not a lesbian yet. I just want to be upfront. And honest. I'm not a lesbian yet. I am into women. One might consider me bisexual. So that's the label I'm claiming currently. So if you would like to take me off that playlist, even though it's doing so well for me and people are really liking my songs through it and finding me through it, which I really appreciate, thank you. I'm not technically a lesbian. Listen, it's coming. I know it's somewhere. I know I can feel it behind me. It's like, but I appreciate also the sentiment of the playlist. Even if I get taken off that playlist, I'm following it because it's so true. The lesbian pop renaissance, though it may be headed right now by Chapel Rowan and Renee Rapp and let's be real, Sabrina Carpenter is not fully all the way straight. Can we agree? No one dresses like that if they're a straight woman. I'm sorry. Like, that's just my opinion. So they're coming to arrest me for saying Sabrina Carpenter might not be straight. They're going to take me to the sanatorium. Like the ambulance has come to wheel me away. God, she's so cute. Anyway, sorry. So yes, full disclosure, I am not yet a lesbian. So if you would like to take me off the playlist for that reason, I understand. But I do, I am into women. So that's, you can write that down. So what I was saying was, that's the one unifying factor. I can say I'm for the gays. And I think a lot of pop artists of all kinds can always say that. So I've never really seen that as being a USP. Oh, well, I'm specifically for the gays. I'm for the queers. The queers love me. Like, first off, I would bloody hope so, because like, if they didn't, I would have to quit. Like, like the point of making music is so that the people who care enough about music like your stuff. Like, can you imagine if I had to exist in a career where queer people didn't enjoy my music? That would mean that's when I would actually go, actually, maybe my music's shit. Because like, that would be the only time where like, oh, the tastemakers, the people who run culture don't like you, right? Like that would be big. And again, when I talk about the queer people that run culture, I am talking about queer people of color. So write that down. Like, so the highest honor of my career is that I would even be put on a playlist called The Lesbian Pop Renaissance Will Not Be White or Is Not White. Like, that is like peak my career. Peak my career. Like, I don't think a Grammy is gonna make me feel this way. Anyway, that's not what's important. What's important is, that's the unifying factor, is that I can always say that queer people enjoy my music. And that's a seal of approval. That's a mark of quality for me. I can't really explain that to other people that aren't also queer LGBTQ music-based outlets. If I was saying it to promoters that do that are themselves queer or who run nights that are queer inclusive, then of course they get that appeal. But also, I don't often have to explain to them the appeal of my music because they are queer. Like, it's so weird. It's so weird. So the gig was absolutely life affirming, and the people at the gig were life affirming, and the support and the kind words and the friendships, life affirming. And I just felt like magical all night, and I was so happy. But getting to the gig was very, very difficult emotionally. I was so stressed and worried, and trying to chill myself out, and it was difficult to chill myself out. And one of the things I kept telling myself as I was rearing up for the gig, because I was so nervous, because I was out of practice, even though when I got on stage it didn't look like I was out of practice, and even though I hadn't practiced much, because I do this. But there was and of course any chance to perform I'll take, and any chance to show off I will take, because that's who I am, that's how I was born, and I've healed my inner child enough to be able to say that about myself without feeling like I'm saying I'm a terrible person. Showing off is not a bad thing. If you got it, flaunt it. And I love show-offs. I love people who show off. I want to see what you do. I want to see you be proud of the things you do, right? That was me healing my inner child, because I'd spent so many years of my life being told that my show-offness was bad, which, I wonder why everybody else was allowed to show off what they could do and not me. Interesting. Anyway, trauma, therapy session. Anyway, it took so much to get myself on that stage. It was so difficult to get myself on that stage that I started saying to myself, it's okay, you don't have to do another gig after this. We'll film it and you don't have to do another gig after this. Which of course is silly, because of course I'm going to do more gigs. Of course I am. Not more gigs, this kind of gig necessarily, but I'm going to do more gigs in my career. Of course I am. This is not the last gig of my entire career, but I was also saying to myself, it could be the last gig, and just make it the last gig, and then you don't have to worry so much about it being such a big issue. Oh my God, the relief that gave me. And so when everybody was talking afterwards, my mum was buying people drinks and food and stuff, because she was just so happy, and I was happy too. Everyone was like, okay, what's the next gig, and when's the next gig, and I'm going, and people are kind of trying to crowdsource the next thing. It might be moving forward, it's so amazing, there might be another, and I'm just kind of going, I don't wanna. And it was so bad, and I was so overwhelmed, and I just kept saying, I think I'm really overwhelmed. I think it's a yes, but it's a yes in the future. I just can't deal with it right now. And even now, I have to be honest. I get on this podcast, I speak the truth. I say what I think, and I think what I say. I genuinely, it's a 50-50 on whether I want to continue to do live gigs, which is so mad. I'm not a shy person. Look at me. I'm not a shy person, but this gig took a lot out of me, and I'm trying to work out how I even feel about doing more gigs. But do you know what I definitely will do? What I absolutely will do is, because we're heading towards the end, not even heading towards, we have hit the end of the Diary of a Fangirl album cycle. I do want to do one final virtual gig, like a proper, filmed virtual performance, maybe a live stream, probably a live stream, maybe a fundraiser. We'll have a think about it. That is a send-off for Diary of a Fangirl. I want to play all the songs live. I want to try and answer questions. I just want to have a proper kiki about the album, give it its flowers, send it off, because I have so many other ideas I want to try. And we have to get to that. We have to get to that, don't we? We have to. So that's the plan. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. But yeah, other than that, I will have a think, because I think it was very overwhelming to have such a positive response, and it was also very overwhelming to be back doing it again after the experiences I had when I was in my teens. Did I mention the experiences I had when I was a teen, or was that in the 30-minute version? Did I say what I did? The vibe was off. The vibe was off when I was a teenager. People were weird. People were kind of weird. They didn't know where to put me, and then on top of that, people were kind of, I was this young preppy girl making these kinds of pseudo musical theater-esque, highly lyrical, songs, but I didn't look like Taylor Swift. I didn't look like what they needed it to look like. And even then, Taylor Swift dealt with a lot of dude bro bullshit when she was in her early stages of her career, because they couldn't see the value of that either. So it was just weird in the early days. And, you know, I felt a little bit of that energy, you know, throughout my entire career. Everywhere I went, just this sense of like, you make naive not music. And of course, no one says that anymore, because number one, they can see the value of Taylor Swift now, and number two, I think because I'm not young anymore. I think when I was writing songs when I was younger, I think it was easy for people to say that I wasn't really speaking from a place of experience, or I was writing stuff that wasn't interesting. And now they can see that my stuff is interesting, but only because I'm 27, and that they can expect a 27-year-old to have something interesting. Do you know what I mean? It was weird. It was weird era, weird vibes from the people I was on the gigging circuit with when I was a teen. Some amazing people, and just a lot of very weird men. Anyway, the next thing I want to talk about is the day before my gig, which was Sundance London. Now, we need to talk about two things. Number one, Your Monster is going to be such an internet hit. You have no idea. If you think I Saw the TV Glow is an internet hit, you have seen nothing yet. By the way, everyone go see I Saw the TV Glow. It's a fantastic film. It's mostly creepy, not scary. And unless you're queer, in which case it's very scary. But it's scary on the existential level, not necessarily on the horror level. Very beautiful film. Beautiful film. I was crying multiple times throughout. Number two. No, Your Monster. We're staying on number one. Your Monster is so good. Call your theatre friends, your theatre kid friends, your Broadway friends, because what this film is this cross between theatre, Broadway, behind the scenes, musical theatre, horror, and scary, but not like in the like freaky way, like kind of in because it's always offset by the romantic comedy aspect. So we're talking about something like a chorus line, but not really, like something with the perspective of a chorus line mixed with something that feels a bit like a kind of slasher-ish. Not really a slasher, it's more like a monster movie. Why did I say slasher? It's a monster movie. I was thinking about something specific. So it's a chorus line monster film rom-com. So it's like Nora Ephron made a monster flick about the theater, about musical theater. Like it's so good. It's so good. And you know, I don't want to hear film DJ used for that freaking milquetoast Quentin Tarantino shit anymore. You know, Tarantino sometimes eats that, but basically he just takes one finished film and another finished film and he mixes them together. It's like, oh, Caroline Lindy took 3 genres that cannot go together and she glued them together like a Frankenstein's monster. Genius. And it works. I would be the first to tell you. if it didn't work. I would be the first to tell you. I'd be like, she tried, but it was just fine. It was so good. It was so visually amazing. The performances were just insane. I find out afterwards that one of the main supporting characters that I was obsessed with throughout the movie is also the producer of the movie. Shout out Kayla Foster. I actually ended up talking to her after the film because I watched the film and I said this to her. I was like, I can't believe that we're finally in the era where a movie like this can get sent to Sundance, that it can exist, be funded, get to Sundance. Like, of course, great movies like this get to Sundance every year, but like, it's one of the jewels in Sundance's crown right now. It just won the audience award at Sundance. Just like, I voted for it. Like, it just like, I feel like we've crossed over into another era of filmmaking. Like, I cannot stress this, and I said this in the article, I'm saying it again. This is a new era where if a movie like this can exist, there is hope. Like, for everyone, not just it's so good. It's so good, and it is as much camp as it is serious, and it's serious in its camp, and its seriousness becomes camp, but it also stays serious. It's like it is, you take it seriously and you take it with whimsy, and you buy into so much of it, and there are hairpin turns that she makes in genre and tone that you follow completely, and that is the twin talents of the writing and directing of Caroline Lindy and the performance from Melissa Barrera, the way she emotes in this movie, the way that she manages to meter her performance throughout them, and you never see the ending coming. Like I could not have predicted the ending. Like, obviously, genre convention wise, that's the ending. But I was shocked, but it's the kind of, like, this is what's so insane. How do you pull this off? It's the kind of ending where I'm smiling in my shock. I'm like shocked but also happy. Like who does that? Who can do that? No one can pull that off. That is like a once in a decade maneuver that anyone accomplishes with a film ever. I don't think I've experienced that maybe like 2-3 times in my entire movie going experience as a cinephile. So you get your theater kids, you get your Broadway girlies, you get your musical theater girlies, you get your, every single one of those girlies, you get them to watch this movie, whether it comes to their theater nearby or they ask for it at the theater nearby. You've got to call your horror fans. You've got to call your Melissa Barrera fans. I was there for Melissa Barrera to begin with. I was there doing what I say and what I practice, what I preach. And I go, the whole point is not, don't cancel Taylor Swift for not saying nothing. Turn up to the Melissa Barrera thing because she said something. So I got my ticket and I sat down in the theater because I am voting with what? My attention. I'm voting with what? My doll hair. I am voting with what? My feet. That's the point. That's how you change things. You go, look, Melissa Barrera is not going to have any consequence for saying the truth. She's not going to have any consequence. And you may want to create a consequence, but she's not going to have a consequence here with me on today, not with my ticket price, not with my butt in my seat. Never, 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 never. And here she is introducing me to some amazing filmmakers who I would have never, ever known of otherwise, because she did this indie film and I wanted to show her support for showing up for people who had been dispossessed. Boom. That's how you change society, right? So like, you get your horror fans, Melissa Barrera fans, musical theater fans, get your rom-com fans. The girlies are gonna love this. It's a slow burn. It's a slow burn, enemies to lovers. It is. And then on top of that, it's a revenge flick. It's a revenge flick. It is. It's a revenge flick. It's so good. It's so good. It's so good. And you're gonna love it. You're gonna love it. Everybody's gonna love it. You will not regret hunting this movie down. Like, you will not regret buying the ticket if it's around. You will not regret hounding your local cinema for it if it's not around. You will not regret it. You will not regret. I'm telling you, if you have ever trusted my taste ever, you have to get your hands on a ticket to this movie, and you need to get everybody's hands on a ticket to this movie. This is going to be all the internet can talk about for a good 2 months. And then it's going to be a cult classic for the rest of our lives. It's so good. Go see it. You're going to love 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 it. If you ever have loved anything that I have also loved, you're going to love this. Okay. So that was my afternoon. Fantastic movie, amazing filmmakers. We live in a new era of filmmaking. I'm looking at the future. Your monster is the future. And I sit down in the evening, 8 p.m. I've done a little bit of work, and here I go sitting down to watch the surprise film, and I'm so ready. And up jump on the screen Emma Stone, Jesse Plemons, and Yorgos Lanthimos. And I go, oh my frickin' God, it's Kinds of Kindness. We're going to be watching Kinds of Kindness. Oh my goodness, Kinds of Kindness. I'm so excited. I should not have been excited. I should not have been excited. It was a bad film. It was a bad film, and it was a film that I felt had taken me back to the Stone Ages. I had just watched Your Monster, where I felt that I was looking into the future. Right? And this movie, Kinds of Kindness, took me back to the Stone Ages. The Stone Ages! So these are the words I wrote at the beginning of my article about Kinds of Kindness, and I don't think they get any better than this. I can't sit here and explain the words better than how I wrote them in this review. So we're going to just read what I wrote. Are you ready? I'm going to start by being nice because once I'm mean, I can't turn back. Yorgos and his team, with and without Efthymis on the pen, have a brilliant talent for unfurling mysteries, maintaining a consistent ambiguity, and making the audience lean in. They have a fantastic visual sensibility, and their shot choices, though sometimes verging into graduating DOP show-off territory, often aid their storytelling in interesting and coherent ways. For those of you who don't know, DOP means Director of Photography, Cinematography. So graduating cinematographer show-off territory. Some of the storytelling in parts made me feel things. There's a blunt humour that sometimes lands really well. There are never any bad performances, albeit there's always some bad dialogue. And finally, when the show don't tell, lack of dialogue is employed in the traditional sense, it works. I don't tend to think it's in their hands. It's very clever filmmaking. Isn't detrimental as some people tend to be with that device. Okay, I'm done. What's this guy's obsession with assault against women played for a nervous laugh? I'm never a fan of shock jockeying unless it has a very clear, coherent goal, in which case I'm a huge fan of shock jockey. I love a good shock. See Jeremy O. Harris, Greg Araki, and it's sometimes in his early work, Pedro Almodovar. It doesn't even have to be an obvious goal, just a clear one. Like, it can be clear that someone's trying to do a commentary, but it doesn't have to be obvious that they're doing a commentary. It can just be clear. Like Slave Play is like the most clear, obvious example, right, of a commentary that is also shock jockeying, right? But shock jockeying with purpose. I love a good shock jockey it gets the people going. It shakes people up. It's good. I love shock jockeying. I love a good nude scene. This is not about that. I am not a Puritan. I love seeing naked women on film. We'll get to that. But the main, this is not that. Okay, here we go. It doesn't even have to be obvious, a goal, just a clear one. It doesn't even have to achieve that goal successfully. So the shock jockeying in Poor Things I thought was very effective because I felt there was one central consistent goal, which was a commentary on the world being predatory towards women, using the device of a childlike woman she's encountering everything all at once and going, well, this is very stupid. She's not been indoctrinated into patriarchy, right? I thought that was what we were doing, but now I look at the pattern of this guy's filmography and I start to realize that this is maybe not so much what he's been doing. Okay. I see it as the peak of laziness when filmmakers employ the visual use of naked, drugged, skinny white women. It's a familiar and overused, worn-out visual, and unless I can clearly see what your stated goal is, I simply cannot sit here and see it as anything other than masturbatory in all its meanings, and I stand on that. This is what I mean about graduating cinematography show-off territory. I feel as if this entire team of filmmakers is visually obsessed and too traditionally minded in its storytelling to the point of complete, vapid, unsubstantive waste of time result. If a film has me feeling as if I left the cinema unable to get precious life back, I simply will never forgive it. Graduate DOP show-offs tend to eschew story for visuals. They tend to think the pinnacle of shock and awe is rape, drugs, gore, and assorted incests and sex scenes, without any focused end. Because I love a focused end. If you're going to do it with a meaning. They have no vision beyond the frame and have an allergy to meaning beyond inference and incomplete metaphor that they cannot properly explain because they never really planned it all the way through to begin with. Even if they do intend a deeper meaning, it's often teenage-level discourse around what they deem to be profound about women, sex, violence, relationships, politics. All of it stinted, all of it completely unorganized, and you can tell through the film, and especially in the interviews, completely not the point of why they dedicated themselves to the project in the first place. Masturbatory. I have no patience for storytelling like this. The camera's gaze in Poor Things was just distracted enough by its visual language that I missed the sensibility in Your Ghost before Kinds of Kindness, to the point that I was actually excited when I realized it was the surprise film I was about to see. What unfolded were 3 short stories, 2 of which overstayed their welcome by at least 10 minutes apiece, where most shocks were just there. And the 4th or 5th set of A-cup breasts on a woman knocked out cold was starting to leave me nauseated, and not in the good way. The camera knew what it was doing, showcasing these bodies either in a way that would inspire a laugh during an assault scene, because you love to see that, usually by presenting them as lifeless meat, or a voyeuristic gaze towards these women that would distract the audience enough before the next scene. I have no patience for storytelling like this, especially when it cannot land the profundity visually or otherwise that it clearly wants you to feel. I love looking at naked women, and I love looking at women's bodies, maybe a little too much, which is how I know the reaction I was having was to the tone of the camera, not the presence of nudity. You should have seen me the next day at a Bigger Splash appreciating Tilda Swinton and Dakota Johnson. Luca, you may always be famous, my guy. This is part 1. I have been sent on assignment by aforementioned Jeremy O'Harris to watch 2 more Yorgos films to get a fuller idea of the guy. Perhaps I may experience a perspective shift. Perhaps I may experience dismay and confirmation. We shall see. I then go on to explain 2 more movies that Jeremy O'Harris himself told me to go and watch: Dogtooth and Alps. Because I made a video pretty much the evening I watched Kinds of Kindness going, what the fuck was that? And he commented underneath that video, watch Dogtooth and watch Alps. So I watched Dogtooth and I watched Alps, and it got worse. I feel like it got worse. It all got worse. It was worse. I actually hate Kinds of Kindness more now. It's crazy because at least I felt with Alps there was like, I don't know, there was just something more to Alps than there was to Kinds of Kindness even, and Alps is clearly the predecessor to Kinds of Kindness in some sense, and Dogtooth is clearly a predecessor in some sense to Kinds of Kindness. Poor Things was an anomaly, and oh my god, what is up with this guy? Whoa. Between him and his writing partner, this is weird, man. The thing is, it's one thing to be like, oh, you have an issue with the nudity, you have an issue with, you have an issue with people doing adult themes, you have an issue with people jumping off the deep end and doing something esoteric and no, I don't. I actually love that. I love that. Do you know how much I desperately wanted to love these movies? Do you know how I walked into Kinds of Kindness with a level of excitement you cannot understand, even though I was not so happy with Poor Things, and I walked out of Poor Things having a panic attack because of how much it affected me badly and how much it made me feel insecure and scared in my own city. I was like deadly. I was having a proper panic attack after watching Poor Things, and I still said, you know, it has this beautiful visuals, and the story is you know, if it's aiming for one singular goal, which is, you know, talking about how dangerous the world is for women, then it achieved it very well. And now I look at the rest of the movies and I go, oh, so no, this guy is allergic to meaning. He refuses to go, like, it's not even like, oh, I just make the thing and I let people infer. No, he just straight up is just doing this. Between Dogtooth, Alps, Kinds of Kindness, and now I put Poor Things in with the bucket. I've seen 4 Yorgos Lanthimos films. I don't need to see any more. I don't need to waste any more lifetime doing this. I know what you are, sir. Enough. What is going on? If it were like, if I could get to the end of the movie feeling like, oh, which is what I did with Poor Things. I was like, this is why we did this. This is why we did this. Now, do I think you achieved it or not? Do I think I like it or not? Do I think you should have spent 2 to 5 years of your life, 10 years of your life creating a movie in order to do this? All up for debate. But at least at the end of Poor Things, I went, the point. I see the point. I see the point. Kinds of Kindness, don't see the point. Dogtooth, don't see the point. Alps, just barely see the point. Now, the thing is, the through line between Yorgos films has to do with a craving for emotional intimacy by any means necessary, right? That's the through line. And even in execution, I can see why on paper these stories seem worth making. to outside people, like, oh, right, yeah, because people are yearning for right, yeah, but the result is so devoid of like, and like, I'm not alone. I thought all of these thoughts, and then I went and looked at the other critics of Yorgos Lanthimos films, and they were all going, there seems to be a thing where Yorgos Lanthimos does a thing, and there is meaning, but the only meaning is, what the fuck was that? Oh yeah, terror, like, weird, I guess. Like, that, to me, filmmaking, even on the personal level, if all you're doing is making films for you, has to come with some sort of catharsis, and you can only get catharsis if you do your Hegelian dialectic. Thesis, antithesis, synthesis, catharsis. What was your thesis? What's the thesis? I'm seeing a lot of antithesis. Don't get me wrong, sis. I see a lot of antithesis in Yorgos Lanthimos films. I'm seeing a lot of but, however, but. What's the thesis? Intimacy? Not even intimacy, just like intimacy. it's not even like intimacy, or it's not even like the trials of intimacy are worth it, or nothing. He just goes intimacy, problems, perversions, terrible violence. What's the synthesis of that? What, like, it should be clear. It should be clear. Even if it's abstract as a film, it should be clear by the end. Someone should be walking away with something, right? You should walk away. Otherwise, to me, like, you can make whatever film you like, and clearly he will. And clearly people will give him cash money to make whatever movie he wants. Big ups to him, I guess. I'm like, it's a waste of the resource that is filmmaking, which is a finite resource. Film funding and filmmaking is a finite resource. Getting those people together to do a thing is such a finite resource. To not have some form of synthesis at the end of 4 movies across 2009 to 2024. I've seen 4 movies across that time period. None of them left me at the end with any sort of answer except one, and the answer I wasn't even really sure was the point of the movie when seen in the entire canon of the filmmaking of this man. I go, oh, this may not have even been the point for him. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? And then, of course, I just feel there is a gratuitous use. It's a lazy device. Like, everyone wants to see Emma Stone naked, my dude. You're not special. Like, why? Over 3 different movies in Kinds of Kindness, 3 different shorts, which, by the way, that movie way overstays its welcome. Like, on every front, there is fat that needs to be cut everywhere. There is just simply... This is what happens when you don't have synthesis. Like, you don't know what you're doing, so you don't know what to cut. Like, there was so many moments where I was just going, what's the point? Why am I here? Can I get my phone out? Like, once I'm saying, can I get my phone out? You've lost, like, I can sit and watch Paris, Texas. Paris, Texas is the slowest movie known to man. And I ate that shit up. Okay? What other slow movies do I enjoy? A ton of them. I enjoy a ton of slow movies. Yeah, so that's it. Don't ask me to watch another Yorgos Lanthimos film. Not a past one, not a present one, not a future one, none. And if you are, in the same way that if you enjoy my taste, you should watch Your Monster. If you enjoy my taste, you shouldn't watch Kinds of Kindness. It is a waste of your time. There is no synthesis. You will walk out going, what the fuck? And it's not what the fuck good. Like, sometimes a what the fuck out of the cinema is a brilliant experience. It is a life-changing experience. Like, when I finished Slave Play, I went, what the fuck? What the fuck? He ate that. And I'm not just saying this because Jeremy O'Harris commented on the very TikTok. I'm saying it because I'm drawing a parallel that when it comes to shock jockeying, I have taste. And my taste is, I should at the very least know what you're doing. Let me at least know what you're doing. I love trolling. I love shock jockeying. I love stuff that's weird just for the sake of being weird. I love it. But if your purpose is either alt-right conservative trash shit or nothing, like, I'm out, mate. I'm out. When it comes to Yorgos Lanthimos, I'm out. Don't call me. Don't text me. Don't say, oh, he's got a new... I don't give a shit anymore. I don't care. All power to him. Lord knows there are a bunch of other people whose tastes are dubious who will 100% fund his films, and good on him. I am not in the business of saying what art should and shouldn't be made. I'm just saying don't bring that should or shouldn't anywhere near me. Don't bring that Yorgos Lanthimos shit near me anymore. I am a Yorgos Lanthimos hater from here on out. Yorgos Lanthimos and me are no longer best friends. The heart has broken. I don't like him anymore. Enough. I Poor Things was just about testing my patience, and I went to bat for that bitch in a way I really shouldn't have, because now I realize I was bamboozled. I was tricked. The way I was going, well, maybe, well, actually, well, it's a critique, well, blah, 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 blah. I shouldn't have been saying shit. I should have taken my first instinct, which was walking out of that Poor Things screening at the BFI in London and having a panic attack and going, this has made me feel bad. That should have been enough. That should have been enough for me to say, this thing has not achieved whatever purpose it was setting out to achieve. And I always try to avoid that, because I go, well, if it's personally affected me, then that has to do with me, and that's not necessarily an objective critique. There is no objective critique of art. If it's making me have a panic attack, there's a problem. Clock it. And finally, let's end on like a much chiller note. There's one filmmaker for whom, if they make a movie, I will never walk out of the theatre having a panic attack, and that is Luca Guadagnino. Let's give it up for Luca Guadagnino. I can only clap with one hand because I'm holding the mic with the other. Luca Guadagnino. Oh, God, I love that man. Oh, the movies he makes. So, here is what I have observed across the 4 Luca Guadagnino films I have seen in the past 2 weeks. I have seen Challenges, Bones and All, A Bigger Splash, and Call Me By Your Name. Those are the 4. I know there are more, but those are the 4. Here's the pattern I'm noticing with this guy. Visuals will never be matched. He has a visual sensibility, but I'm starting to think this is really not special. Like this, because Yorgos has this too. But the thing with Luca is he matches his visuals to the story and the pacing to the story in a way no other filmmaker I can think of does. He just intuitively can read a story or write a story, in the case of some of them, and just know what the rhythm is meant to be and what the shots should be, right? His visual sensibility is unique. When it comes to Call Me By Your Name, it's an incredibly nostalgic sensibility. When it comes to Bones and All, it's incredibly rustic, kind of vintage, nostalgic in another sense, but also it's got this kind of realism to it, which makes which integrates with the kind of eating of the flesh and whatever thing. It helps. And then, A Bigger Splash, very visual, like a visual feast, but it's also very crisp. It's got this kind of sense of modernity, and Challenges. Oh my God, Challenges is just, again, crisp. It has the same sensibility visually and in the terms of the edit and the shot choices, the same quality as the script, right? So we can infer from this, Luca Guadagnino films are only as good as the script. Call Me By Your Name's script is so-so. And on top of that, it needed cutting in multiple places. It's bloated. Every time I watch it, I have more issues with it. But it's so visually engaging that sometimes I just turn off from the story and just enjoy the visuals. And I stop paying attention to the plot points because I know that most of them are not important. Oops. They are. It's a bloated story. Beautiful film. Bloated film because it's a bloated script. But gorgeous script in the places where it's going at the right pace. A Bigger Splash. No faster, no slower than its script. The script is pretty slow, but it's a good slow and it's a slow that works, and I like it. Bones and all. Another bloated script. Another very, very, very overly verbose, overly long script for a concept that is pretty cut and dry, right? I know where I would cut, and there is a very specific part of the story that is just too much. There's too much in there. It needs to be fewer. We get it. After a certain point, we get it, right? And I'm not talking about like, oh, you need to cut out all the scenes where they're eating people. No, there's like a specific part of the script where it's just like, that didn't even need to be in there. It's not like a small part. It's like a section where it's just like, okay, we get it. like, okay, we get it. And it can be inferred in other ways. And so there's a whole bunch of runtime that could have come out of that. But Luca matches the energy and the pace of the script. Now, when they put Justin Koritsky's Challenger's script in Luca Guadagnino's hands, magic was made. Gold was dug up from the crust of the earth. Okay? Because that script is immaculately paced and immaculately cut. There is no bloat to Challengers. None. It is all muscle, no fat. Nothing. It's lean. It's a lean script. And Luca said, bet. Luca said, bet I can do that. And he did. And he did. And so Challengers is an amazingly well-made film, paced at exactly the pace of the script. So I am so excited for Queer. Because Queer is yet again Justin Koritsky's and Luca Guadagnino. I think these two need to attach to each other at the hip and make movie after movie after movie. And I've only seen one movie that they've ever made together. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Queer is going to be terrible. But I will be sat. I will be sat. I'm so seated. I'm so seated right now. Right now. It's going to be great. We're going to have a great time. It's going to be great. Finally, yeah, I covered all of them. Challenges, A Bigger Splash, Call Me By Your Name, Bones and All. Yeah, I covered all of them, so I don't even need to say, I finished it. Finished. Fantastic. So that's Luca Guadagnino. And with that, folks, that is the end of our podcast. I now need to edit this, and it's video. Exactly. Yeah. Rest in peace to me. Anyway, I'm fine. I'm going to be fine. I'm already recovering. Yeah, it's fine. And I'll deal with the edit. It's chill. I've missed you guys. And on top of that, I'm going to make sure that we put a date in the diary for a virtual concert. That I'm working on right now. My schedule, thank goodness, has started to clear up. And I'm making sure that I'm having a hot girl summer, chilling out, fewer projects, almost no projects, just keeping the podcast and the blog ticking along, having a good time, letting girls know about the music, that kind of thing. And enjoying the lesbian pop renaissance. I'm really enjoying it. I was a little early to Chapel Roan, so I get to enjoy. I should have gone to the gig in London last year or earlier on this year, but I was just too chicken shit to turn up in person. And that's the truth. Oh, the things I have missed out on because I was too scared to turn up in person. But then I've had bad experiences turning up in person to gigs where there are...
Hello and welcome back to the Sophisticulture Podcast. My name is Umnia. I am trying a new filming format, which may be great, which may be terrible. And also, I'm entirely late with this episode of the podcast. Do I have an excuse? Let's have a think about an excuse. Let me think about an excuse while I find my notes. So I did film this podcast. It deleted itself, which was so cute. It was so nice to have all of those hours of time just disappear like that. It just goes to show that the universe really loves me. Where are my articles that I wrote the other day? I have a couple of articles to read to you, a couple of topics I'd like to cover, and then a rant. And if I remember the rant, then we're good. And if I forget the rant, then you get to hassle me about it. So let's start with the rant, actually. This is a rant that continues from a rant I did on my secret TikTok that everyone knows exists. I overloaded myself this summer. And this leads actually into what we're going to end up talking about in a second. I really overloaded myself this summer. I planned to have a summer that I was just going to chill. And hold on, should we try switching off this light? Oh, that's spooky. Yeah, we're doing that. So I tried to have a summer that was chill this year. I tried to be like, I'm going to chill out, relax, do my own thing, follow the breeze and vibe. And then work me basically didn't take the initiative of scheduling time off. So what ended up happening is I'm expecting a hot girl summer, chill, breezy, cover girl, and I am now going to end up having to work that summer, having to work the whole summer, which in some ways is really fun as a concept, and in some ways has really overwhelmed me. So I have a bunch of projects that are still in the middle of production and post-production. Some things that are things I want to start, some things that are time sensitive that need to be started and have to be finished by the autumn. And then just the stuff that keeps going. Like one of the things that I do on a weekly basis is this. And, you know, if out of nowhere your filming corrupts on the day that you film it, everything gets pushed and pushed and pushed until you find the next gap in time, which is now. I keep putting my hand in front of the light. You see, live TV, people, it's not even live TV. Oh, I hate the way that looks. Oh, that looks terrible. That looks really bad. Oh, that looks really bad on a camera. Because I'm used to filming on a freaking 480 thing. I'm expecting it to look terrible. Is that? And then I need to bring the brightness down, I think, just a tad. Just a tad. To like... There we go. Oh, no, you see, there we go. Exactly. That was the plan. This was all just one elaborate bit. So I've overdone it this summer, and I am now in the process of first aiding that and trying to get as many things off the docket as quickly as possible, which is easier said than done because I am also someone that kind of gets an ego boost from the idea of doing a lot of really cool things and managing them all. But I am one human with barely 24 hours in any given day, and I need to sleep through some of them. So I have to figure out a way of doing that. But basically, that is going to end up segueing into an article I want to write this week, which is tentatively titled How to Take the Summer to Live Simply. I remember one of the first things I wrote for when I was writing out my thoughts for the internet, as opposed to just making videos. One of the first things I wrote was a review of Bell Hooks's, what was it called? Which version? Because I've read a couple of different Bell Hooks books since then. So I can't remember which one exactly. It was... It wasn't that. I'm just singing while I'm trying to find the title. I think it was All About Love. That I read. And there was something really poignant in the book, which was when you live simply, you have enough space in your life to love people fully. And I think that I've really felt that the last year, that I've maybe been overdoing the work and therefore not able to kind of show up for people in my life or just enjoy being around people without worrying about what I'm doing or what I have to do kind of thing, which is a bit disappointing because I thought I was past learning a lesson like that. Clearly I'm not. Clearly I am the kind of person that needs to keep learning that lesson, but also I see it as being, like I said, an ego boost to have things I'm doing and to achieve them. And to be fair, Dopamine was just featured at Brighton Rocks International Film Festival as an honorary mention. I think it's honorable mention, actually. I keep saying honorary, but it's actually honorable mention at Brighton Rocks. I've had amazing feedback on my writing. I have broken 40,000 followers on TikTok. A song of mine was put on an awesome playlist, like I told you last week, and that song has taken off. Not like, oh my God, it's going viral, but like people have found me through it, which is just always a joy when that happens. and when my music connects to the people that it's meant to find. So I am addicted to that a little bit. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to sit here and be like, I'm such a great person. I'm such an interesting person. I'm such a normal person. I treat the two imposters of success and failure just the same. I don't. When I fail, I want to do more. And when I succeed, I want to do more. I guess I do treat them the same. I do treat them the same. Hey, and I hate hustle. I wake up every morning going, why have I stacked my plate like this? So I'm trying to not do that. So we'll see if I succeed this summer, but I'm hoping if I write it out as a strategy, as a plan, as an article, it will help me figure out how I'm going to implement it into my life and what thought pathways I will need to engage to be that kind of person. We had 2 articles this week. One of which was an updated neurodivergent guide to patching holes in your film nerdery. And I will just tell you I read the whole thing out when I first did the podcast, but there isn't much that's different. There's just a couple of addendums since I last wrote this as an article. It's not been too long since I wrote it as an article, but it is something that is worth repeating. So especially now that I have a couple more pieces of advice, I think, on it. So you start the Letterboxd account, you start the list of things you want to watch. You do not use the list to pick what you watch. You use the list to work out if what you watched was what you intended to watch. And you don't get too disappointed if it isn't. You go, oh my gosh, something that wasn't even on the list. That's fantastic. But a lot of the time, the function of the watch list is to raise your awareness for the films that you do want to watch so that when they come into your periphery, you know what their titles are. And you're like, and it feels so good when you watch a movie and then you go, I intended to watch that movie, ba, 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 kind of thing. So that can always help. A mindset thing, make sure that you're doing it for your joy and that if people give you reasons to like something, you don't take them on. I'm going to have to close the window because suddenly now, you're going to hear some Spice Girls through the window. And we're back. Has the lighting changed? No, the lighting's fine. So you make the list, you forget the list. It helps you raise your awareness of the films. You pick one venue at one time regularly and you shut everything. You go to that venue, you pick something that sparks joy, you shut off everything and you vibe. And my biggest hack here is to just pick stuff based on what you see as being familiar and what sparks joy, what looks like it'll be a fun time. If this is the added thing that I added at the end, if it's an hour in and you're like, this is ass, bail. You only have so many hours to spend on this earth. Not everybody's art is worth you spending all that time on it. Unless you're someone like me who is happy to spend all that time being upset by someone else's artistic expression because number 1, it helps me hone my taste. And number 2, I'm a born hater. I'm not really a hater. It's more like I love being able to work out why I don't like something. I love sitting and working out why I don't like something and stress testing it against new information. And changing my mind. I actually love changing my mind. Like if I could figure out a way to like kinds of kindness, I'd love it. And I'd love the fact that I could switch my opinion like that. So, one of the best hacks in terms of paying attention and keeping focus throughout an entire film, especially if it's not like really engaging or if it's really, really, really slow, is just think about the quippy quote you're going to put on Letterboxd at the end. That's always a really good motivator for me. I know it sounds trite. It's like, oh, you're watching a whole movie just so you can put your scathing review on Letterboxd. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I don't have anything to say. Sometimes something was just good or sometimes something was just bad. I rate it and I move on. And the rating is good enough for me. The rating sitting there for someone to find, for someone to read, for someone to look at is good enough for me. But we are social beings, and the idea that you should be enjoying art for art's sake in some kind of monk's vacuum where it is only inherently interesting to the ego and to you internally and that you are somehow detached from the opinions of others or or garnering the interest of the opinions of others, I think is an incredibly outdated way of seeing the world. And it is the kind of way of seeing the world that breeds film bros, because even though they may be doing a similar thing, which is giving their opinion on a film in a very straightforward way, they're doing it from the position that there is no social benefit to talking about a movie with the incentive of having a discussion with other people, showing off your opinion to other people so you can discuss it. Film bros tend to show off their opinion about a film to show how good they were at watching the film, not so much so that they can show how much they enjoy talking about films. Do you see the difference? It's a very subtle one. But it's the difference between a film bro telling you that your opinion is wrong and someone engaging with your opinion on a film and wanting to curiously actually know why you liked or didn't like something. And I think that that's one of the joys of cinema. It's one of the joys of art generally, having an opinion. I mean, part of the opinion is part of your humanity. Like, part of being a human is having an opinion on things. And I think it's beat out of us from a really young age. This idea of conformity first has to start with the idea that your opinion doesn't really matter. And your opinion can just be a vibes-based evaluation. Like, I respect a lot more people that can say, I just didn't vibe with that movie, versus people that are, like, don't give their opinion on a classic film and then just fake that they loved it. And I can always bloody tell, because I go, well, what did you like about it? And they either give me the freaking copy pasta of everything everyone said about that film or that type of film or that filmmaker before, or they just go, it's a classic. Like, there's stuff people will say where you go, you have something to say that is not flattering about this film, but you're scared that you're not allowed to have that opinion. You're allowed to have whatever opinion you want. And people say, oh, because we live in a free world. No, because you're a human being on planet Earth. You're allowed to have whatever opinion you want. If it gets your ass beat, that's different. But no one's going to beat your ass over a film unless they are crazy. So that's the update to the article. Bail after an hour. And what else did I change? Walk into this an autonomous mind. No one can tell you what's good or bad. In fact, walk in knowing that most of the things people love, they love for subjective reasons. Some classics are mid, some flops are iconic. When people say why you should watch something, mentally note anything that seems interesting to you, but remember your film journey is for your joy. I couldn't have said it better myself, because I said it myself. Okay, this second article I am actually going to read in full, because I think it is a really great primer for people who are brand new to me. I think of people, when they find me at first, they're usually finding me through my values-based stuff, like whether it's a song that I've written that's about something that has to do with politics or society, or it's a TikTok I made, or it's an article I made, or it's a podcast I made that talks about these kinds of issues. I think usually people are finding me through kind of living my values. And so I wrote an article, 4 things I have done this year so far to live my values. And this should, hopefully, if you are someone who shares these values, it will either be stuff you already do, or it will be stuff that you could consider doing. But also it gives us specifically a explanation, potentially, to anybody that's brand new, if they are not fully aware of who I am and what I'm about. This gives an idea of me and what my boundaries are, and how long I can hold a grudge. But more than anything, I don't see my holding a grudge as something I'm proud of. It's just something I can't not do if there's been an injustice. And in terms of living my values, it's not hard to do. It's really not hard to do when I acknowledge that the alternative is creating the world I don't want to live in and that I don't want my kids to grow up in, right? So that's how I make sure that in every circumstance, I'm not like, oh, but it would, there's a Five Guys round the corner from my house. Like, it's so easy to just pop in there and get some fries. But the day I found out that they are financially supporting settlements in Israel and supporting the IDF as they are committing a genocide, it was harder to do. Giving free food to soldiers under most circumstances is something I'm really not going to want to financially aid in any way. I don't want my food that I pay for to be part of the profit that helps pay for free food for people to pick up a gun. Like that, just under a lot of circumstances, that won't fly with me. So I liked Five Guys. I was obsessed with McDonald's. I was obsessed with Starbucks. These were things that could get me through a day. And so I just found other ways to get through that day. I found other coping mechanisms, better coffee, better fries, at independent restaurants. So here we go. Whenever I'm ready, 4 things I've done this year to live my values. I am very, very good at holding a grudge. I still don't listen to Miley Cyrus. I have not forgiven her for that era. No, still haven't. I find it a point of personal pride and also a sense of literal self, and that I live my values in every single way I can. In this world, you have 2 sources of individual power that are the easiest to wield for good: your attention and your cash. I do not take any power or privileges I have for granted, but especially with these 2, it energizes me to make sure I'm devoting my resources and attention to places that are creating the world I want my children to live in. My values are pretty simple. Leave everyone to live in peace. Do not allow injustice to go unaddressed. Live simply and without excessive consumption, and if you harm no one, including yourself, do what you want. So, in no particular order, everything I've done this year and years past to integrate my values into my everyday. Number 1, beating climate change and voting against fast fashion. This one is easy. I do not buy new clothes anymore. This started this year, and there's only one use case where I broke this rule, when I needed specific clothes quickly for a shoot or a film. I do end up returning those items anyway. I'm of the view that all the coolest clothes have already been made. They are sitting on a rack somewhere, begging not to end up in a landfill dump in Kenya. When the mood strikes, it's my obligation to go and find them, rescue them from that plight, and look awesome doing it. It has been difficult, though the above is true. Not all the coolest clothes ever made fit me. Which is leading me to consider another avenue which I'm less happy with, buying new, but from slow fashion brands. I also discontinued my merch line, and I'm trying to find a way of relaunching it with garments that are sustainable and recycled. I just don't like the idea of being part of the problem. Number 2, combating censorship on social media. Now that it's confirmed that the platforms we use collaborate with state actors to suppress our free speech, we must get crafty and we must keep going. Some days that looks like reposting, reblogging, liking and sharing, and some days that looks like repackaging information into more memeable, shareable formats and amplifying a message that isn't getting out there. Often, when a video of mine does well for a cause I hold dear, I will donate the proceeds of that video, if it's monetized, to the cause as a way of doubling the work that the video did. For many reasons, I don't personally sponsor individual families in Palestine, for example, but instead will donate to mutual aid organizations on the ground, as that's the way I feel most comfortable showing up. I will always repost and share the GoFundMe links of any family that comments or messages me on TikTok so that more people can see their posts and make their minds up for themselves if they'd like to donate individually, and I do not discourage people from doing so. If I ever have a COVID-cautious TikTok blow up, that money goes straight to the London mask block and towards personal projects I'm working on to raise awareness about COVID and the risk of COVID that is still prevalent to this day. I also did a gig in support of War Child, so again, taking what I do and putting it in for a good cause. Number 3, voting with my eyes and my feet. I have unfollowed and blocked a lot of people in the last 4 years over a myriad of issues and letdowns. On top of that, my playlist landscape has started to shift too. So when I say a myriad of issues and letdowns, I am talking primarily, up until the last 7, 8, 9 months, I'm talking primarily about people who were on holiday during COVID, who were traveling during COVID. I remember the nail in the coffin for me with Timothée Chalamet was that he was jet-setting off with freaking all sorts of people in the middle of a pandemic. Which was very difficult to watch. But on top of that, there were many businesses that, were not fully aligned with my values in that time. that a lot of people that were very good about being liberal during the Trump years suddenly were endorsing the same behaviors in Biden just because it was slapped in blue, it was painted over in blue. And we'll get to Joe Biden in a second. Actually, let me put that on the docket, because I didn't actually plan to talk about the debate and Joe Biden, but the girl has something to say. So tickety type. So it was a lot of kind of being very disappointed in people who were not taking precautions and who were putting people at risk. I think there were a bunch of people who were very anti-vax as well. There were people that were being transphobic. There was whole transphobic flare-ups kind of within the public sphere for months and months and months during the pandemic. So I have been very careful to get people like that out of my sphere and fill that space with the people that are doing the work. So yeah, the businesses I support have also shifted. Beyond the BDS list even, no more Disney Plus subscription, no more fangirling over Marvel movies in public. Heartbreaking but necessary. It fills me with self-assurance that I take that position, so I never doubt it. I just keep thinking about the kids I used to take care of in nursery and cannot really forgive Disney for that, which is basically a short form way of saying, I used to be a nursery nurse, and one of the things I could always do with the kids that maybe none of the other nursery nurses could do, that none of the other nursery nurses could do, was imaginative play around Disney properties, specifically Marvel properties, Star Wars properties. Because I was going and seeing the movies in the cinema. I was coming back and, I could talk about frickin' Poe Dameron and Finn and all of that kind of stuff. It was Finn, right? John Boyega's character. I can't, because it's been so long, because I've clocked out of that a long time. Like, I think the last Disney thing I saw was, the last Star Wars thing I saw was Andor. Right? No, Mandalorian season 3. And the last Disney thing generally, I can't even remember, but it's been a while. I haven't even watched the second season of Loki. Like, I've really tapped out. And so when I think of the kids I looked after there, and I think of the kids that Disney stood up for on October 7th, those babies that were killed, those children that were murdered that day, and the money that was put towards caring for those children who were a fraction of 1,200 people who were killed that day. And I think of the 15,000 just children, before we talk about their fathers and mothers, aunties and uncles, sisters and brothers. If we just talk about the 15,000 kids that have been killed in Gaza now in the last 8-9 months, that Disney has done nothing for, donated nothing to, that's something I can't get over. Tomorrow BDS could say, okay, they've taken Sabra out of Captain America and you're okay to go back to watching Marvel. It's icky to me. It's mean. It's needlessly cruel. Like, even if you take the most extreme view about who these kids' parents are, and you say that every single kid that died was a human shield being used by a terrorist organization, it still doesn't fly for me. Like, it still doesn't make any sense that you're not even a word, let alone anything donated. And there are kids dying in Gaza right now in Mickey Mouse t-shirts, in Captain America t-shirts. It was not even a couple of days into this conflict where I saw a Gazan baby dead, covered in ash, with a Captain America t-shirt on. And a couple days later, or a week later, I saw pictures of a young girl's bedroom. The girl was dead. The place was strewn apart. And the sheets on the bed were Mickey Mouse sheets, Minnie Mouse sheets. Nothing for those kids because they're brown. Nothing for those kids because they're brown. And how then do I feel as a brown kid that likes Marvel movies, that likes Disney movies, that likes Disney anything? How am I meant to take that? I don't belong here. You don't give a shit about me. You don't give a shit about my childhood. You never did. You don't care about the lives of young children being taken. Really, you don't, as long as they are You just don't. Like the outreach you did for those Israeli kids was a publicity stunt because you don't care about kids. Like, not really. Because if you cared about kids, you'd care about all of them. You know, and I'd feel the same, by the way, I'd feel the same way if it was the opposite way around, because it's babies, like it's children. And that's before we even get to, you already know what time it is with me. A lot of the people being killed are not terrorists. They are civilians. And they are all preventable deaths. Like 99.9% of them are preventable deaths. And this entire war was a preventable war. And October 7th even was a preventable event. It was telegraphed by Egyptian intelligence for weeks prior. And it just drives me nuts, and it sends me into a level of grief I cannot discuss. I cannot discuss, because it is the true pit of hopelessness to think about. But yeah, no Disney for me. No Disney subscription. You're not getting my money anymore. Fuck a Deadpool and Wolverine. It's fuck that shit forever, even though that was a movie I was very much looking forward to. It's fuck Marvel. I can't watch Marvel movies anymore. It's fuck Disney for real. It's fuck Disney for real. I just realized I added Inside Out 2 to my list of films to watch, and it just dawned on me as I'm talking. It's a Disney film. So no, I will not be going to watch that. Anyway. And yeah, I'm a one-woman show. It's not like it's going to put a dent in Disney's billions, but it soothes me. It soothes me that in the memory of those 15,000 kids, how many of them Encanto fans, how many of them Frozen fans, how many of those babies Marvel fans, Captain America fans, how many of them dead, not able to see their first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth birthday, ninth birthday, 10th birthday. In their memory, I can sacrifice any movie. Like, fuck a movie. Like, there's a movie that I will find movies to watch, okay? There's no shortage of movies to watch. There's no shortage of indie movies to watch. I could watch nothing by a major company for the rest of my life, and I'd still have enough movies to watch at any point that I would want to watch them. That's not what I'm saying I'm going to do, but I could. So there's genuinely no need for me to publicly telegraph or financially support those movies. Now you're saying, but it's not just Disney, it's all of them. Disney is a family company that says it cares about families, family-friendly content, and children. And it put its money on that values-based, on October 7th, and it did not do it any time since. So that October 7th gesture was purely publicity. That had nothing to do with the lives of those children, those poor children. That just had to do with their marketing. Because if you really cared about children, you'd care about all of the children. So, of course, I have filled that space that has now been cleared of those people who cannot, for the life of them, look at brown people and see people. It has been filled, that space has been filled with artists and businesses that I can rely on to be values-based more assuredly. My playlists have gotten so much more expansive. There are so many artists that are not afraid, under any circumstances, to care about the sanctity of all life, to look at brown people as being worth protecting, to look at brown people as being worth living, worth having their lives. And they will get my coin and they will get my eyes and attention. Period. If I may be honest, I work in the entertainment industry, and I would hope the likelihood of me being in a Disney-esque room or any room headed by a major company that is still abandoning children and their families at some point before I die is not zero. So there may come a time where this becomes a more difficult choice. And this is where I don't hold it against people who still work for these companies. We haven't overthrown capitalism yet, and artistic work takes money to make. So as long as someone is vocal and doesn't abandon these children and their families, and I say that very pointedly, when I say these children and quote unquote innocent women and children is just a way of erasing innocent Palestinian men. Because there's no such thing. Like, the moment a young Palestinian boy looks like a man, now he's a threat. Like, no. Like, I'm not on with that at all. So if you don't abandon these children and their families, and that includes their grandfathers, their uncles, their fathers, their brothers, their mothers, their sisters, their aunties, their grandmothers, their cousins fourth removed. If you don't abandon them, I don't boycott by association. It leads to a slippery slope of purity politics that I don't want to be involved in. And that also means that if someone who has been vocal is in a movie that is coming out, they are in a pole position, they are in a leading top billing position in that movie, I will, especially if they've been incredibly vocal, if they've really stuck their neck out, it's not just been kind of peace and love on planet Earth, or, oh, it's so terrible what's happening over there, but it's been actual sustained solidarity and action, then that person, I will override any kind of corporate sense of a boycott for that. So for instance, I haven't had to really boycott Netflix because they feature a lot of Palestinian-made films, including Farha, which is literally about the Nakba, on their platform, and they were very easily, visibly able to be accessed on Netflix after October 7th, especially as people were trying to understand the situation more. And so I've never really had to boycott Netflix, but especially because Nicola Coughlan had been so vocal about not abandoning these children and their families, I turned up for Bridgerton season 3 bright and early. I clocked in, bitch. I clocked in, you know, and the coin was then the attention and the feet were used to vote. You know, I voted for that. I voted in with my feet and my attention and my writing even for Your Monster with Melissa Barrera, because I knew that was a project she had upcoming after she had been incredibly vocal in support of Palestinians. My consumption of Pink Floyd has gone up recently because I was reminded Roger Waters is a fucking G. So many artists, Mustafa, Omar Apollo, Clairo, Yassine Bey, but obviously and always. Is my thing about to die? It did die. What other, Nemesis, Saint Levant, Saint Laurent. It's Saint Laurent, right? Because it's Yves Saint Laurent, but it's Yves Saint Laurent. Right, Saint Laurent. Right, got you. Because it's, yeah. So many artists I've been introduced to who do not find it hard at all to discuss this. If Susan Sarandon's in anything in the next couple of months, I'm there. And then I just show up for a lot of independent businesses. Like, I have divested from Sephora to some extent. I was not spending too much money there, but when it came time to getting products to make myself look pretty, it was always Sephora. Divested from that to some extent, and now I found so many beauty brands, Huda Beauty specifically, that are fantastic brands to follow. And, you know, I don't find boycotting difficult because it taints the idea of the item when I think about who I'm throwing under the bus just so I can put on a lip gloss, just so I can go and watch them. I would be distracted through the whole movie. And if you're the kind of person who's listening to this and going, oh, I wouldn't be distracted through the whole movie, I'd be totally fine. Like, it wouldn't even bother me that this company was involved. Because, like, everyone's involved in terrible things. It's like, yeah, but are you sticking to some kind of code? Do you have some kind of code that's like, this is the line I won't cross, or this is the thing I won't support? Because if you're in the mindset of like, oh, but everything's bad, like, but it's all bad, like, how am I meant to boycott everything? It's like, well, no one's asking you to boycott everything. And there are tons of alternatives that will enrich your life. And it's not like everything has some kind of catch. Sometimes you just find a better skincare brand. Oops, just happened to all work out. Sometimes the playlist gets 10 times better. You know, sometimes the comedians you find are 50 times funnier. You know, it's that kind of thing. And I I feel a sense of rejection sensitivity when I look at artists that specifically individuals. When it comes to individuals, I have a much more lax opinion because we live under capitalism. But if you're actively like, oh, these people are dirty and brown and disgusting and like terrorists and they're going to kill us all, so we need to kill them first, like the dirty rats they are. If you can say that in the public sphere, even if you're implying it in the public sphere, I feel rejected. Like as an audience member, as someone looking at you, as someone who has prioritized one type of life over another, quite clearly caring less about one type of life over the other, and that other happen to look a lot like me, who have names similar to me. What am I meant to glean from that other than you're not welcome here, fuck off, I hate you, don't watch my stuff, I'm not speaking to you, I don't want to be in community with you. When someone does that in their art, or when someone is actively saying that in the public sphere, what I'm hearing is, I don't see you as being worth you paying attention to me. I'm not inviting you into my space. And the thing is when artists do that, fundamentally you're saying my art was never and is never for you. So what do you want me to do? Stay here and keep getting hit? Keep catching strays? I said this to Matty Healy, This was the reasoning behind me leaving the 1975 in the dust and not looking back. Because the comments he made, it wasn't about, and the behaviors, it was not about, oh, well, he didn't mean it, or, oh, there's an apology. It was fundamentally that the actions and the tone implied to me that he does not see me as someone paying attention to him, as being part of the group he feels he's talking to. I feel the same now with Amy Schumer. Okay, but if you're not talking to me, why should I listen? Boycott. It's not boycott, it's you have excluded me from this conversation that you're having within your artistry. I'm not welcome here. And any artist that could do that to brown people anywhere on the face of the planet, whether they are African American and you're being racist as fuck, or we're Sudanese and you're being racist as fuck, or they're Palestinian and you're being racist as fuck, I identify with any group of people who are excluded. If you're being transphobic as fuck, the same. Oh, right, so your community, the people you're talking to is not me. You know, I may not be trans, but my community has trans people in it. So if you're not talking to them, you're not talking to me. So it's not boycott, it's not cancel, it's you told me I'm not welcome here. You told me you don't make art with me in mind. You are not speaking to me when you speak through your art. So why should I listen? Why am I here? Oh, they're trying to cancel me. No, you told them they weren't welcome. You told them you don't give a shit. You told them you don't like them. You told them you could discard them in your mental image, in your mental logistic interpretation of whatever event you are referring to in your art, or whatever political issue you are talking about. J.K. Rowling, oh, they're trying to cancel me. Oh, they are trying to cancel me for speaking the truth. No, you quite explicitly have said, trans people are not in community with me, and this is the art I make. So inherently what I hear as an ally to the trans community is, I was never speaking to you. You don't go, you can't sit with us. Okay, well then fuck it. I'm not finna sit with you. What, you want me to fight to sit with you? You want me to sit here and make my stand and go, no, I'm gonna stay and listen to J.K. Rowling tell my friends that they are predators. Huh? No. And I'm inherently suspicious of anyone that would do that to any group, because I will be next. If you can do it to one group, you can do it to all the groups. Guess what that's called? The alt-right pipeline. The alt-right pipeline. You're in the alt-right pipeline. And I want no part of it, because that thing is greased. And you go down that thing fast. And I don't want to go there. I don't want to go there. Anyway, so let me keep reading the article that I very artfully put together and instead going off on these little branching tangents. Anyway, so yes, we have an overthrown capitalism. So as long as someone is vocal and doesn't abandon these children and their families, I don't tend to boycott by association. And in some cases, I may override a boycott just to vote for that person to continue to have a public profile. I'm thinking specifically of one movie, maybe one movie that I'm going to override my boycott for because two of the leads have been part of fundraising efforts for Palestine. And it's coming out, I think, after the movie we're boycotting. So potentially I may not be crossing the BDS line. If I am, I will consider not going still. But there is one movie where there are 4 leads in the movie, that should give you a hint, and one of them was part of a major fundraising effort in the UK, Cinema for Gaza, which I think it was Cinema for Gaza. There were a couple of them. And he's fantastic. And the other one has done a lot of fundraising for refugees and a lot of fundraising for the Médecins Sans Frontières and a whole bunch of other fundraising around the current situation, which is, what did I just say? What did I just say? If you don't abandon these people, it's such a bloody low bar. I don't need you to agree with the politics. I don't need you to agree with what needs to happen next. I just need you to see these people as people suffering and treat them the same way you treated the hostages, you treat the hostages, and you treated the people that passed away on October 7th that were killed. Is it rocket science? Is it rocket science? Is it rocket science? Is it rocket science? No. I am pretty strict about this on the institution end and a lot more cautious, a lot more chill on the individual. My rubric, of course, can be found in my oral essay, FU Pay B, which I still love that title. Or the Brittany Broski paradox, because it was at the time at which Brittany Broski got onto the frickin' She got onto the Instagrams and she was like, why does everyone want me to talk about friggin' Palestine? Like, why would anyone want me to talk about Palestine? We're like, what do you mean? Why does that? And then like people were pulling up the clips of her podcast where she's like, why wouldn't we stick up for people who need our help? And she'd just been like, the night before on close friends on Instagram, someone snitched on her. Close friends on Instagram talking about, why does everyone want me to talk about it? It's like, well, because you have a huge following and you're always talking about social justice issues. What? Like the math. It was like baffling to me that she could say that. But the reason I said the Brittany Broski paradox is, once again, that my rubric is pretty clear, because it has to be. If you're going to do all of these, you need to be crystal clear. If you say nothing and do nothing, at the very beginning, if you say and do nothing, I was willing to, because I didn't know how long this would go on for and how many people would die. At the very, very beginning, there was a concern, because there was still this idea of, if you care about Palestinians, if you care that they're being killed, you're immediately anti-Semitic. So if people were worrying about their jobs, not too much heat on them. If they got actively Islamophobic out of fucking nowhere, And then if you have enough clout to say something after a while, and certainly now at this point, there is no reason not to, and you say nothing, I'm revoking my energy from you. I'm revoking my attention from you. I'm revoking, right? So there's a very clear route. And if someone flips, if someone switches, if someone changes their mind, if someone moves in one way or the other, so too does my movement. But the block list I thought was incredibly smart. And I think it applied a lot of really good pressure. And I think it also made those who are deeply Islamophobic a lot more cautious about how they were going about their Islamophobia within their institutions and within how they were penalizing people for caring about brown people being killed across the globe, right? and I say Islamophobia, but as Sikhs know and as Arab Christians know, you kind of get swept underneath with the rest of us. So it really is just brown people phobia, and it is allowed to proliferate in this awful way. And as time goes on, more and more people are able to not risk their job by saying something, which I think is brilliant. But yeah, So I have my rubric, and you can find it on the article. You can find the link to the TikTok where I kind of explain how I break it down, because at the end of the day, we do still live under capitalism. Number 4, community care. As I'm sure you know by now, you will find me with my KN95 at the function. The current color is bright green, although I tend to ration those ones out because they're a little more expensive. This one's my daily driver. My daily driver is a KN95 Rosy Mask FFP3 NR. And it's got the little ear loops, that's nice on kind of, groceries and stuff. You just kind of want something a bit low key, especially if you're only going to be wearing it for a little while. Once I'm wearing it for a while, I want to have the head straps on so that I don't have to think about it. And it's not so much on the ears, that kind of thing. This is one people forget, but is vital. COVID is disabling people and killing disabled people every day. And that includes all of you that have caught COVID, whether you know it or not. You may have complications now due to COVID, whether you feel fine or not. You may have long-lasting health effects because of it, and therefore you are a vulnerable person. You are a member of the disabled community to some extent, and you are just as vulnerable as the rest of us. Like when people say, oh, I'm one of the vulnerable ones. Oh, COVID, I'm one of the vulnerable ones. If you've caught COVID before and it's come up positive, you're one of us now. You're one of us now. I wouldn't sleep if I was part of pushing those people, those disabled people, those long COVID haulers, those vulnerable people to the wayside, as Fauci would like us to. The horror stories of medical neglect around COVID long after the hospitals were overwhelmed with patients has been dread-inducing. I don't think people understand the scope of the danger they are in when they rest themselves wholly on the current healthcare system to save them. I love doctors and healthcare workers, but by virtue of my proximity to them, I know their limitations and the limitations of any group of people in any area. And I know the eugenics built into the system, into the world, that people are not including in their calculations when they think about how high risk they are. The factor that people forget to include is long COVID. They don't include it because there is a deep stigma against chronic illness in our hyper-capitalist world, i.e., if you are not a productive member of society, then you are disposable. There is a disposability being baked into our communities by this eugenics that simply is antithetical to how humans have learned to survive. Taking care of each other is the social contract. When you break it for everyone, yourself too. Okay, my camera battery died and I replaced it with a new one. Okay, so we're ready to go? Okay. Taking care of each other is a social contract. When you break it for everyone, yourself too. Wear a well-fitting KN95 mask, not a surgical one, a KN95. Look them up. In crowded places, wash your hands regularly. Stay home when you're sick. Create the world where we worry about people when they're sick and we create space for them to be sick. We're not doing this right now because everyone is slammed. And I'm telling you that, this capitalist slammed thing is manufactured. We can afford to care for one another. When this system crashes, when the recession hits or whatever, we will be all we have left. The pressure from above, this slammed thing, will be gone, and you will wish you hadn't broken the social contract of community care beyond repair. And that's the end of the article. So those are the things I wrote this week, and I think they're incredibly poignant to restate for the record. And I've of course iterated on. And now here are the final little ideas I wanted to impart to you, which will be articles later this week. What are intellectual influences? People are talking about this a lot, certainly in my end of the woods. The idea of basically what I've been doing this entire episode, which is discussing ideas, trying to give context, but also giving opinions. And it's not necessarily about influence insofar as influencing, but more influencer as in someone that is providing a service of information and intellectual ideas that are already things people want to stay in touch with, listen to, and more tightly hone their arguments around certain issues. So they pick intellectual influencers in those fields, either based on the eloquence of their speech or on the content of their specific qualifications. And I know certainly for me, it's not just that I pay attention to experts. I also pay attention to those who can take the knowledge from experts, which I think is probably more of my purview, taking the knowledge from experts, from all of the things that someone learns, and providing opinion pieces. Just in the style, I think when people talk about these things, they go, well, everyone's giving their opinion on the internet. And it's like, yes, but opinion columns have been a vital form of communication for a very long time, and no one necessarily needed to be qualified as a news investigative journalist in order to give their opinion on a topic. Sometimes you just needed to be an author or an artist or just a socialite. Opinion pieces have a much more lax standard, but I would say no less an important function within the current social context, because there is therefore with people's in opinions a site on which for people to congregate and start throwing ideas around to synthesize a solution. So I'm not saying it's some kind of noble feat, but certainly with intellectual influences, I think they create a nucleus point, nucleation sites within the boiling water that is the current political climate and the current scientific climate, not just on COVID, but on climate change. Creating specific situations where you may not be a climate scientist, you may not be a virologist, you may not be a career politician, you may not be necessarily someone who is a war reporter, but you are amplifying potentially, like I said, with what I do in terms of battling censorship, taking ideas that people are having a hard time packaging for audiences. And it sounds a little cynical, but it is kind of a way of, it's like oral, it's like storytelling. It's like the oral tradition of storytelling. The idea of hearing an idea, hearing a story, hearing a myth, hearing a piece of information, and passing it on to the next person in a format that they're going to understand, relate to, potentially a different way of synthesizing the information that creates that provides a more palatable what's the answer I'm trying to say? A more palatable receipt of the information. Like for some people, it's going to have to come from some types of people in certain types of language. And I think that's what makes a lot of communicators on TikTok infinitely shareable, is that not all of them are bachelor degree, PhD in certain topics, but what they are fantastic communicators and great listeners. They listen to the information, they can synthesize it into an idea that is more palatable, that is more universal, and not necessarily paring it down or diluting it. I think with specifically advocating for Palestinians in the last couple of months, in the last several months, it has been really interesting and beautiful to watch Palestinians who are not on the ground, not just translating from Arabic, but also translating entire cultures. And they're not necessarily PhD holders in international affairs. Some of them are. A lot of them are. A lot of them have studied the humanities in college. But some of them are much younger than that, or some of them are college dropouts, or some of them are, just majored in a whole separate thing, or they are, not everybody is going to be what you would consider to be what's qualified as an intellectual influencer, but sometimes it's just about taking the information and sending it on to the next person in a way they are going to receive better. A lot of people saying the same thing, but in different ways, is one of the best ways to disseminate information. It is also one of the riskiest, because things can start getting misconstrued and different intents start coming into the mix. But that's what happens within communities. That's just how communities work. So that's what intellectual influences are at a glance, and I will get into more detail when I write my article. And the other is, of course, how to take the summer to live simply. And that is going to be something I'm going to have to work out on the page. I think it has to do a lot with really getting clear with myself what I actually need to do that has actual deadlines, that if I don't do them, the thing will fail, it will be late, it will not be counted, money will be lost. Those things must stay on the table and the rest needs to go. I'm looking for a summer fling. I'm looking for a summer fling, maybe even with myself. Just something that is going to allow me to recharge my batteries, because I feel myself having a lot of incredible creative ideas, but I also feel that sense of such dire exhaustion. Like, I'm exhausted at the idea of doing what I love, which means we've gone too far. We are on dirt road track. We're heading towards a cliff. We're Thelma and Louising. And no, I will not get into Ridley Scott right now. If you're on the side account, but I'm not going into it. Everything in the box office is going to do fantastically well, and everyone's going to make tons of money for the rest of the year. Okay? Is that what you wanted to hear? Is that what you wanted to hear? Because that's what I wanted to hear. That's what I want to be the truth. I want everything to be the best box office opening weekend of all time from now until the end of the year. That's what I want. That's what I want. Huh? Okay? So now, how about that? Except for Deadpool and Wolverine. That can flop. And by the way, that's not just on boycott shit. Like, I was really looking forward to that movie. And then I heard some stuff about it. And I'm like, oh. The perils of knowing. The perils of knowledge. The perils of knowledge. Okay, bye.